You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Good evening. My name is Peter Basserman. As chairman of the Branford Inland Wetland Commission, I'd like to open this evening's regularly scheduled meeting. It is May 14, 2020. The time is 7 o'clock. Meeting is being conducted as a virtual meeting using the Zoom software conferencing platform instead of the more traditional in-person format. It is being held in compliance with Connecticut Executive Order 7B. There are, at this point in time, 5 commissioners seated, so they can all participate. Everyone will participate this evening. As such, we have a quorum. Agenda for tonight's discussion is available at the town website. Notice for the meeting is in accordance with the town's regulations. To enhance public exposure to this evening's proceedings, Branford Community Television is recording and broadcasting this evening's meeting, and customers of Comcast can view that on the appropriate channel. I think we need to take a roll call. So when I mention your name, please indicate by saying present. Eric Rose. Eric Rose, you got to unmute.
I just unmuted. Oh.
Eric, present.
Okay.
Sorry.
Stephen Sullivan. Stephen Sullivan. You got to unmute, Steve. Can you unmute him, Jamie?
I cannot. Oh.
Present.
Steve, are you present?
Present. I'm present.
All right. Suzanne Boda.
Present.
All right. Clarice Bergerman.
Present.
Richard, you present? Richard's on the iPhone.
Present. Richard.
Okay.
Commissioner Reynolds, present.
Great. All right. We have completed the roll call. Jamie, before we proceed, are there any other additional information, supplemental remarks you want to make regarding conducting this evening's virtual meeting?
Sure. Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. Just a quick reminder, per executive order, please state your name and title prior to each time you speak. If you need to unmute yourself, there should be a button in the lower left corner of a microphone or a speaker, depending on what platform you're on. You can also turn off your video adjacent to that. There's a button to toggle that. You can toggle between gallery and speaker view in the upper right-hand corner. And you can open up the participant window by clicking the participant button on the lower portion of your screen, where you can also mute and adjust your video. And also there's at the bottom of that screen, an option to raise your hand. So if you're having a hard time speaking, you can raise your hand to alert the chairman. That about covers it.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. We have the approval of 2 sets of minutes. First, the April 9th regular meeting minutes. They were sent out prior to this evening's meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Steve Sullivan, I second it.
Who was first? I'm looking for a motion. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of April 9th. Thank you, Stephen, for the second. Next, April 23rd, special meeting minutes. Looking for a motion.
This is Commissioner Boda. We still have to have the vote once the motion's been seconded.
Okay, I'm sorry. All in favor of the approval of the April 9th regular meeting minutes indicate by saying yay.
Aye.
Yay.
Do we have to do this individually?
Commissioner Granold abstains.
Do we have to do this individually, Jamie?
I believe that'd be easier to do it that way, to do a roll call vote.
Okay. Roll call. Yes, I approve. Next up, Steve.
I approve. Steve Sullivan, I approve.
Okay. Suzanne.
Commissioner Boda, yay.
Richard. Richard Goodall.
Commissioner Granold, what were you asking?
Do we approve the April 9th regular meeting minutes?
Commissioner Granold abstains.
Commissioner Rose.
Approve.
Commissioner Begeman.
Commissioner Begeman, approve.
Okay. Next up, we have the April 23rd special meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Steve Sullivan motions to approve the minutes.
Larry Begeman, second.
Okay, we'll do this again. Regarding the April 23rd special meeting minutes, Commissioner Basserman approves. Commissioner Sullivan,
Commissioner Sullivan approves.
Commissioner Boda,
Yay.
Commissioner Grinalch,
Commissioner Granold abstains.
Commissioner Rose,
Approve.
Commissioner Begeman.
Approve.
Thank you for that. Next up on the agenda is the application for receipt. Inland Wetland 200402, 9 Elm Street, the expansion of existing parking lot and associated drainage system. Can you frame this for us, Jamie, please?
So this was an application for receipt. We do have, I believe, Jim Preddy here to give a brief overview on the application. So don't mind, I'll hand it over to him.
Welcome, Mr. Preddy.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jim Preddy, Criscollo Engineering. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Jamie, can you put the drawings on the screen?
Yes, just 1 minute.
Perfect. Jim Preddy again, Criscollo Engineering. This is an approximately 1 acre triangular piece that's kind of tucked in the corner of where Elm Street and North Harbor Street meet. The southern property line, the long side is against the railroad tracks for Amtrak. It's been a commercial building for a whole number of years. I believe at some point Nutmeg Steel was here. In fact, this is classified as urban land, and from what I understand, quite a bit of this had been filled many, many years ago by Nutmeg Steel when this building was put up. As you can see on this plan, there's buildings kind of centered, and then there's 2 gravel parking areas on the east and the west. The eastern parking area is the subject of this application. Basically, we're expanding it a little bit. The impervious coverage will expand by about 4,200 square feet. Jamie, if you could turn the page. There you go. So we're expanding the parking area there. Like I said, about 4,200 square feet. We are on the southeast corner of that parking area is a retaining wall to limit the amount of fill necessary to create this parking area. We have basically two paved aprons in and out. And let's see, there is 1428 parking spaces. We are providing a buffer. Right now, the gravel goes right to the building. We're going to provide a new landscape buffer against the building. We're going to control the drainage that runs toward that retaining wall by catching it with the catch basin and dropping it down to the area just south of the new parking area with a vegetated swale, U-shaped end wall to change the direction. The swale will have a stone section in the bottom that help infiltrate, and then a level spreader edge before it goes on down the hill. We've also provided a vegetated buffer along that edge of the parking to kind of limit any sprawl. The other part of the southerly and easterly side will have a retaining wall and a fence there, so there won't be any sprawl in those directions. The disturbed area downhill of the retaining wall and the edge of the parking will be replanted with the New England Conservation Wildlife Mix that's shown on the plan. And I mean, that's pretty much the whole application. The stormwater, we are providing an inch of rainfall over the entire parking lot would be about 938 cubic feet. We're providing 1,176 cubic feet, so more than an inch over the entire area. But to be fair, if we were just looking at the change in impervious surface area, we're providing about 3 times what, about 3 inches over the difference in the area, the increase. So I believe that we have provided plenty of storage there for rainwater. I mean, this will be a process stone, so some of it will get back in the ground regardless. And I just as an effort to keep it brief, because this is for receipt, I can answer any questions or hear anything else at this point.
Mr. Preddy, this is Commissioner Basserman. The 2 questions, I guess. Did you say that it would the additional parking, the 4,200 square feet, would be processed stone, or only a portion of that?
There's Jim Preddy again. There is a portion of this area that's already processed stone. The increase would be processed stone. What's not there now is the paved aprons, which engineering is going to require. So we've added those.
Thank you. The second question is, what's the, I guess if I look at this, the southern area on the triangle, what is the drop off? I can't read the elevations. Yeah, that area.
So that's total. It's about 15 feet in total. Jim
Gotcha.
Preddy again.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Rose. That area at the bottom of that 15-foot slope, where does that flow off to? It goes into a wetland, or it is in wetland?
The bottom of that flat area at the bottom is a wetland area. We didn't have the southerly edge of that flag because it's basically at the bottom of the railroad slope and it's pretty thick in there. And we're not working on that side, but it would, that wetland line would wrap around and follow the bottom of the slope from the Amtrak embankment.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boda, what is the distance between that pinch point, the edge of just the limit of disturbance, where you have that silt fence, and between wetland flag 4 and 5?
4 and 5. The silt fence is about 15 feet or so away. And that, sorry, Jim Preddy, Criscola Engineering, what we show is the silt fence is about 15 feet away, but if you look at the grading, it's actually a little farther up at that point. But I was trying to be realistic as far as movements of equipment there.
And again, Commissioner Boda, have you, is there an existing soils report for this area, the detention?
We did submit a wetland delineation report from David Lord for this property.
No, not in the wetland, but where you are discharging into that basin. You said you were talking about stone and infiltration, but I'm wondering what's underneath.
It's classified all as sorry, Jim Preddy, Criscola Engineering. It's classified all as urban land. I believe a lot of this has been filled many years ago.
And Commissioner Boda, that's in your soils report? So in other words, you verified that there's not ledge or anything underneath there?
Jim Preddy again, we haven't dug test bits to verify ledge, but again, just by you could see by the shape of the contours, you could almost see where the fill had gone to. And in the soils report, it does, I mean, he does classify it as well to excessively drained disturbed soils.
Commissioner Boda, thank you.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Any other questions for Mr. Preddy? This is received tonight, so there's no action. Appreciate the brief overview, Jim.
Thank you.
Next up, we have application for receipt inland wetland 200501, 15 Lemaitre Lane, which is a 20 by 24 garage. Is there somebody here for Lemaitre Lane? Mr. DeGioia?
It's Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. I just unmuted Michael's line.
Okay,
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
I can.
Michael DeJoy at Donmar Development. I hope everyone's doing well.
You're up.
We come before you tonight, this evening, seeking for this commission to grant administrative authority for Jamie Ann to administratively approve the application to construct the 20 by 24 garage at Lot 9, aka 15 Lemaitre Lane. And that's basically it. It's pretty straightforward. Jamie Ann is very familiar with the application and the plan. And that's it. I'm more than willing to answer any questions that anybody has.
Let's see, Commissioner Basserman. Mr. DeGioia, the garage is it on the northern, or pardon me, the eastern side of the road?
Hang on one second. I can't see the arrow here. I believe that's correct.
Okay.
Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. It is on the eastern side of the road. This is the first lot on the eastern side of the road if you start at the southern side of the development, adjacent to the prior development.
Okay.
So I'm currently showing the plan. I also have a couple pictures of the current conditions on this lot. If you guys want to see those as well. One thing I've realized with this plan is that it does not have erosion controls, and it should have erosion controls added to the low side of the project prior to any approval, which Michael has indicated he'd be more than happy to add.
Commissioner Bassler, do we have, you know, I don't know, gutters on this garage? What happens to stormwater with this addition, and what does the plan indicate?
So there will be gutters. The leader drains will be tied into the existing yard drain that's there. So, you know, there will be no concern as far as erosion from roof leaders or anything like that. We've also added an additional yard drain, as you can see on the plan, to mitigate any concern from swales and anything like that.
This is Commissioner Rose. So this is adding 2 more cars to an existing two-bay garage?
Correct. That's the request of the homeowner.
And the area drain you're referring to is the one at the northeast, off the northeast corner of the new garage?
Correct. So if you look at the plan, there's an existing yard drain that's there. We are proposing to extend an 8-inch pipe to the rear of the garage and add an additional yard drain to collect any surface water, because the garage kind of interrupts the swale coming through the back of lot 9.
Is lot 9, so this is lot 9.
This is lot 9, yes, it's currently occupied.
So the swale you're referring to, I don't see it in the topo lines. Where is it?
So you can't really see it on this map, but basically, if you look at where the existing yard drain was, anything that comes down that hill right now or through the backyard flows to that yard drain. And by putting the garage there, the engineers felt that it was going to be interrupting the water flow. So as an added precaution, they're proposing an additional yard drain in the rear of the garage there.
This is Commissioner Rose. So we're talking about surface drainage coming from the east to the west, correct?
From the east to the west. I believe that's correct, yes. I apologize. I can't see the north arrow here because of the view here on the screen.
Do we have a region map that can show us where this site fits into the overall subdivision?
That would probably be a question for Jamie, but if you were to come in off Lamarcher Lane, the existing area, this is the first house on the right-hand side.
I'm sorry, this is Commissioner Rose, off of Gould Lane?
Off of Lamarcher Lane.
Okay.
Commissioner Grinolch, that's the south side of the development, correct?
I'm sorry, was that question for me?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent is the south side of that.
Is the lot near the south end of the development?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Jamie, this is Commissioner Rose. Do we have a regional map of the subdivision? We can place this on the property?
I don't have one readily available on my computer. However, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I should have one on my desk that I can hold up. I don't know how this is gonna work. So this is the overall development and the lot we are talking about
This is a new approach.
is this one right here.
All right.
Wait,
Which is-
Commissioner Boda, wait, can you just give us a second? Because I have to bring you up. Right now, you're a thumbnail, so just can you give us a second to sort of zoom in on you?
And so this Commissioner Rose, that's the southerly most end opposite of Gould Lane.
Commissioner Boda, can you put your finger on the lot that we're looking at and then orient Gould Lane? Like, I can't see your,
All right, so This is the lot we're talking about, and Gould Lane is over here. So this is the end of the existing portion of Lamatra. These are both developed houses, and this is the first house.
Commissioner Bassett, and the road is to the left of that house, correct?
Commissioner Boda, yes, that should be true. If we're looking down at it and we're heading toward Gould Lane, then the road should be on the left.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Yes, that sounds right.
Mr. Majority, this is Commissioner Basserman. Is the existing lot that we're talking about seeded?
The lawn is intact. It's been there since last year. Yes.
Are there erosion controls still existing on that lot?
No, because there are none needed. It's completely restored.
Okay. And are we going to add those? It sounds like for the additional garage here.
Yes, I've spoken with Jamie previously prior to the meeting. She noticed that there were no erosion controls called out on the site plan, so of course I have agreed to install erosion controls to her liking prior to any approval.
Commissioner Boda, what is the picture that we're looking at now?
The existing yard drain.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. This is the existing yard drain, and this is the location of the proposed garage. This is looking up the driveway. And then this is showing that there is a bit of a paved apron. And this is seated along the edge of the driveway here as well.
So, Commissioner Boda, this image that we're looking at, there's vegetation, but there's also exposed, I use the term soil loosely. So when you say that it's all vegetated, can you clarify? That doesn't look all vegetated to me.
So lot nine is completely vegetated with the exception of next door for lot 10. So the area that you're looking at, this picture is probably better. They actually just finished raking everything this evening, and they will be back in the morning to hydro seed lots 10, 11, and 12. So that area right there is disturbed because of runoff from 10, 11, and 12 that flow to that yard drain. Other than that, the entire lot is completely seeded and restored.
This is Commissioner Rose. The two flags that we see in the foreground, are those related to the garage?
Yes, those are 15-foot offsets to the garage.
So which one is the corner of the garage?
Both are the corners of the garage. They are 15-foot offsets towards the hill, if that makes any sense.
So they're 15 feet from the front of the garage, west of the garage face, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So actually, if you look carefully, you can see the garage front. You can see the front garage stakes in the rear ground, in between the foreground stakes. Am I seeing that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Bassett, does that suggest then that there is a gap, I guess, between the new garage and the existing structure?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So the stakes that Commissioner Basserman, Mike DeJoy at Donmar, Commissioner Basserman, the stakes that you're looking at in the front here represent a 15-foot offset. So basically, the face of that garage is 15 feet back from those two stakes with the pink ribbon tied on it.
Thank you. So the request is, this Commissioner Basserman, the request, as I understand it, is for administrative approval. And I guess there any commissioners in support or not of an administrative approval for this garage addition?
This Commissioner Rose, certainly this fits, nicely into the idea of administrative approval, but we do have 3 open sites, exposed grade on all 3 sites. I believe we're only framing on 1 of the 3 foundations. I guess I just question whether administrative approval should be tied to getting those 3 sites stabilized, which would take the developers' resources and focus before they spread themselves too thin on a 4th site, albeit just a garage. But nevertheless, we have 3 open construction sites. I wonder if we should tie administrative approval to buttoning up some of the other sites that are under construction.
Commissioner Rose, Commissioner Basserman, being specific, are we talking about lots 10, 11, and 12?
We're talking about the 2 that are along Gould Lane. This is Commissioner Rose, sorry. 2 which would be at the, they're along Gould Lane on the easternmost corner, and 1 would be on La Matra, and I believe it's the first site in La Matra off of Gould Lane. So we have 3 active foundations over there.
Commissioner Basserman, Mr. DeGioia, can you specifically tie Commissioner Rose's comments to particular lot numbers?
Commissioner Rose is, Mike from Donmar. Commissioner Rose is speaking about lot 18, 19, and 16. 16 is framed and roofed. 18 is being framed right now. And 19 is just a foundation at this point. As far as getting those stabilized and restored, that's impossible to do at this point. They're under construction. Personally, I feel that this garage has nothing to do with those 3 lots. They're still under construction. And Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, to date, those lots have not been an issue. We're constantly out there monitoring and maintaining erosion controls. And I'm not quite sure how I can go and stabilize lots that are under construction at this point.
This is Commissioner Rose. So I would certainly defer to Jamie on the efficacy of agency approval for the garage. I'm not suggesting that you stabilize anything. I'm simply suggesting or pointing out that your resources, subcontractors and labor are spread across 3 active construction sites. And given this history, this will be a 4th active construction site. And just throwing up a flag asking whether the commission has any concerns about spreading your resources a little thinner and out to a 4th area. I'm not aware of any problems on the other 3 sites, not suggesting there are. It's just a question of whether we want to have more area disturbed and more places for you to focus with 3 active construction sites. And again, that's the extent of my comments. I would certainly go with the commission and defer to Jamie and using her judgment on whether to provide agency approval of this garage project.
Mike from Donmar again. And Commissioner Rose, I appreciate your concern. The resources, on those other 3 lots would really have nothing to do with what would be going on here. It's not like there's one subcontractor that's doing all the work on all 3 lots, and I would be pulling them off of there to come and do this. If that makes any sense.
It does. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Kraus, and I just want to expand on Commissioner Rose's question in terms of the resources. And I know we're not supposed to be discussing those lots on Gould Lane during this meeting, but it does impact this based on the resources that Commissioner Rose brought up. My recollection of those lots that faced Gould Lane was that no routine construction traffic was supposed to be entering those lots from Gould Lane. And, you know, that's something that needs to be managed at the building site, and that does take resources. Is my recollection correct?
Mike from Donmar again. What we had discussed when we sought approval for those lots was, and I'm sure Commissioner Rose will recall because him and I personally had this conversation. We had discussed no heavy equipment traffic entering or exiting onto Gould Lane, which we have not. We have regular vehicular traffic, obviously, that cannot traverse through the overland area. But as far as heavy equipment is all brought in through the rear.
Okay, so no large dump trucks and things like that are entering from Gould Lane?
Dump trucks with a rubber tire, yes, are entering from Gould Lane because they cannot traverse over the overland.
Okay, so
bulldozers and excavators coming through the back.
Bulldozers, okay, great. Okay, thanks. And someone manages that, and they will manage it for this portion of your development as well?
Yes, that is me personally.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Greenwald, I would be in favor of having Jamie handle this administratively.
This is Commissioner Boda. I think to Commissioner, the past couple of comments, I think that it is within our purview to consider the full site and its history when looking at individual applications to move forward with another component. And what I'm wondering about is a status update of the property in its entirety and the state of sediment and erosion control that we've been asking about. This is one portion of the property, but it's not in isolation. And so I'm wondering if Jamie can provide us some most recent update.
Jamie Frederick, Wetland Agent. I did go out to the site this morning to look at the erosion controls, discussed adding more stone to the construction entrances at lots 18 and 19 and 16, which Michael said would happen. He has been putting hay bales across lots 18 and 19 at the end of the evening. And he's looking to get some more hay bales because those are starting to fall apart. 16, he has put across silt fence so that vehicles can't enter the lot, because I understand that it's currently being held up by waiting on some supplies. I asked him to just put some additional stone on the anti-tracking pad outside of that erosion control to help make sure that area remains stable. I'm
sorry, Commissioner Boda, can you clarify? So the last couple of items that you've stated, so more stone needed at construction entrances, more hay bales, more silt fences because the site is not currently stable, versus trying to maintain a stability. Can you clarify, is our sediments being mobilized still?
There has been some minor tracking of material out of those 3 lots. And it has been addressed to some level. And this is further addressing that.
Jamie, this is Commissioner Rose. So has everything you asked for and expected up until today been promptly addressed and properly done? And did you this morning find that things you previously requested needed to be still done? Or were you asking for new things because of new conditions?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. A lot of the anti-tracking pads on the site do require continuous replenishment of stone just because of the way that the site is. Adding some sort of fabric layer underneath this stone might help a little bit, but the tracking pads do sink significantly. So I would say it's kind of a continuous cycle of it's okay, it needs more work. And the I'm not guess I'm trying to figure out if I should keep going on that topic or move forward. Have I addressed your questions regarding that, the anti-tracking pads, or are you looking for more information there?
This is Commissioner Rose. I'll defer to Commissioner Boda first.
Not entirely. I think that I understand the idea that anti-tracking pad is one of those items that is put in place and then needs to be maintained. And so the way that you had begun to describe it was that there was a need for more hay bales and more silt fences because the site is not stabilized. So I want to clarify if the site is not stabilized right now, and then to Commissioner Rose's question, I understand the ongoing nature of adding to existing sediment and erosion controls, but the question is, when an item has been put forward, has that item been addressed? Whether or not it needs to be addressed again because of the nature of the design. So the two questions are, has the contractor, Mr. Joya, firm, whomever, have they been compliant in a timely fashion? And separately, are those sites as stable as would be expected for the state of construction that they're in right now?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I would say that the developer has been responsive to my requests to address these issues. Some of these items have continuously kind of popped up on the Malone McBrome memos. I think that to clarify with the hay bales and the silt fences that I was talking about, those are an additional precaution to help close off the entrances to the 3 sites that we've been discussing. So the 2 sites on Gould Lane, those hay bales are continuously being moved each day when they go in to do construction. So they're starting to kind of deteriorate. So Michael indicated that he's looking to get new hay bales so to better improve the close off of those accesses, those access locations. And then the silt fence was installed across the access point at lot 16, the one that's within the development. So that was an additional erosion control that was put in to prevent people from driving into that site while there's no active construction going on that site, because I believe they're waiting for some windows to be shipped in. So, and there was some grading occurring at lots 18 and 19 on Gould Lane that changed the grade where the access drives are. So they're flatter, so that should be a better situation now, but because of the grade change, they need to put some more stone in there, which we discussed this morning, and I'm not sure exactly on the time frame, but Michael indicated would be happening. We also discussed there were some areas where the silt fence needed to be restapled, which Michael said would happen. I've not gone back out to the site. I don't know if that's happened already or not. I'd say the one thing that has not happened that's been on the list for a while is to add a silt fence behind the stockpile adjacent to where catch basin 13 is. I discussed that with Michael today. We walked up there. It seemed like there might have been some confusion regarding what that was requesting. He said it'll be installed tomorrow. I think that that's the one thing that and then sweeping has not always happened as quickly as I would have liked to have seen it. I understand that there is now a sweeper option on site so that he'll be able to sweep more regularly should anything be tracked out into the road.
This is Commissioner Rose. The sweeping you're referring to is, again, related to keeping up with the end tracking pads?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Yeah, so the sweeping would be for if there were a scenario where a truck had some material spill out, or if a truck had some material that didn't get taken care of by the anti-tracking pad.
This is Commissioner Baskerman. It sounded, Jamie, like, you have a number of, if you will, conditions that you addressed with Mr. DeGioia. I guess to the extent that we can define those conditions having been completed, I think then you can consider it administrative approval. But it sounds like there's a number of things that need to be done before that can really move forward.
So Commissioner Boda, Jamie, is that something that you can do? So if the commission were to move this to agent approval and make the recommendation that that agent approval not be issued until your this list that you enumerated a moment ago, the silt fence adjacent to the stockpile, the sweeping, and then those items earlier, the additional hay bales and silt fence. And if there is an additional item or so, is that an okay process for you administratively to hold the agent approval until those items are done? Or does that trigger that the commission needs to issue a separate permit with conditions?
Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. So I think if you were to make a motion essentially that you would accept agent approval if the repairs to the erosion controls as discussed, repairs and improvements to erosion controls as discussed, and revised plan as approved by the agent. Well, that doesn't really be part of the motion, but I think as long as it's part of the motion that those things need to be done to satisfy the commission's granting me the authority, I think that would work. I don't know that they could necessarily be conditions of approval. I don't know that would.
The Commissioner Boda, we have in the past included language such as to the, how did it go? To the approval of the wetland agent. We have included that language to the satisfaction, that's it, to the satisfaction of the wetland agent. So we could potentially enumerate these items and include the stipulation that it is met to the satisfaction of the EO. Would that, does that work for you from a logistical standpoint?
I think so. So just Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, to clarify, are you talking about making a motion that it can be approved via administrative approval contingent upon certain criteria being satisfied to my approval, essentially?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that could work.
This is Commissioner Rose. I not to muddy the water, but I would add to that what we're after is certainly we trust that you are capable of making the judgment, but in fact using your judgment that the site is being managed to your satisfaction, issues are being addressed promptly and adequately to your satisfaction, that focus on 3 active sites at the north end of the property isn't at risk of being undermined by a 4th active site at the southern end of the property. So it's not simply a checklist, but it's saying to you as enforcement officer that you are comfortable, they have it under control, and you've been satisfied that your oversight has been promptly adhered to, and that you don't see another active site being a risk to how the project being managed.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So my understanding is there are certain things on site that I think can and need to be improved sooner rather than later, which Michael has indicated he will do. So once those things are done, it would be appropriate to issue this, assuming you guys make that decision. And then there are other things I know that he's looking to do that I think will certainly help with site stability. He mentioned he's looking to seed a lot of the areas that he can. So those things wouldn't be contingent to approve this necessarily, but those are things that I would foresee happening in the near future. So
this is Commissioner Rose. So using those latter items you just referred to, I would suggest that if in your judgment those things need to be done now as opposed to being in the future, then they should be done now. And you should use your judgment in requiring that they be done. If you don't see that being necessary, that they can be put off into the future, and in the interim, approving a 4th active site is reasonable to you, that's fine. But that's you exerting your judgment, not them saying, we'd like to do these other things in the future that we'll get around to. So we want you to wrap this up in a bow and say that the issues that are urgent in front of you, they're under control to your satisfaction. The issues that are on the agenda to be addressed, you're satisfied addressing them in the future is fine, or contrarily, they're not, you need to address them now.
okay, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent.
Okay, so Commissioner Boda, that being said, I think that then it would need to go as a motion, yes?
I agree. Commissioner Basserman, do you have a motion you'd like to make, Commissioner Boda?
Commissioner Boda, I can begin the motion. Someone can second and then add some of the details that have been discussed in the last couple of minutes. I haven't written everything down. Does that work? I take the silence as a yes.
Commissioner Basserman, that works for me.
Okay. Commissioner Boda, so I will make a motion that 15 Lamont Drive be moved for agent approval, with the stipulation that items such as the street sweeping, the installation of a silt fence adjacent to the stockpile, the additional hay bales and silt fences are added, as well as the additional stone at the construction entrances are added to the satisfaction of the EO. And additionally, the other site conditions that might prohibit additional construction not be started until the sediment and erosion measures are to the satisfaction of the EO, whether on 15 La Mancha Drive or one of the other lots.
There you go.
It's Commissioner Rose. I second the motion as stated.
Just for Commissioner Basser, just for clarification, the last comment about the other lots had to do with what?
Can you, are you gonna get mine and just bring it back and I'll heat it up later? When you bring yours home, you have to heat it again.
I want some too.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was on mute.
I like mine tepid, not hot.
So Commissioner Basserman, again, what is the additional lots at the end there, the comment?
So first, there's a second. All right, so the discussion, this is Commissioner Boda. So then the other lots, the determination to issue the agent approval is not solely based on the state of lot 15, but on the whole of the site, which may include considerations of lot 16, 18, 19, or anywhere else on the site.
Commissioner Basserman, thank you. That was good clarification. We have a second motion. Is there any further discussion? All right, we're going to do a roll call for the motion. Commissioner Basserman says yes. Commissioner Boda?
Aye.
Commissioner Granolf?
Commissioner Granolch, yes.
Commissioner Rose?
Aye.
Commissioner Begeman?
Commissioner Begeman, yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Commissioner Sullivan, aye.
Commissioner Kraus?
Commissioner Kraus, yes.
Thank you all. I think we have a agreement here. Maybe we can move forward. Anything else, Jamie, on this item that needs to get addressed? We're good to go?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I think that's it.
We're good to go.
Unless
Okay.
Michael has anything.
That concludes the applications for receipt. We now move on the agenda to the application for review. Inland Wetland 200301, 58 East Industrial Road, which is the construction of a new building and a material storage area. Let's see, we had received this last time, so do we have somebody here for the app?
Jamie Frederick and
Jim
the
Preddy,
wetland.
Criscoll Engineering. Representing Mr. Fisher, who is the applicant, also on here with us. Jamie, if you could put the drawings on the screen, that'd be great. Perfect. So as Jim Preddy again, Criscoll Engineering, 58 East Industrial Road. It's approximately 3¼ acre parcel on the northeast corner of the intersection of Pin Oak and East Industrial Road. It's known as Lot 12, the original subdivision known as Woodlands on 95. Generally speaking, the site slopes from west to east. There's public sewer, water, gas available in the roads here. There's a cul-de-sac. Where do we go? There's a cul-de-sac at the end of East Industrial Road, and then past that is a 50-foot strip of land that actually belongs to the adjoiner in the back, which is Altera Holdings and Bittersweet Partners. Along that 50-foot strip, the town road drainage from East Industrial Road runs down and that finger of wetlands that meets the pipe is actually a riprap channel that was put in originally when the subdivision was built. You could switch to the second page. The proposal is for Fisher Excavating to develop and occupy the site. We have here is basically two areas. The area to the left is the upper area. I'll call them both upper and lower areas. The upper area would be accessible directly from the cul-de-sac. There'd be a small 6,000 square foot building that would be office and garage space. The striped area would be proposed bituminous pavement, which would include the entrance and passenger car, so personal vehicles and any visitors. The rest of that upper tier, I would say, would be processed stone area and would be basically for construction vehicles, the trailers and things. In between the upper and lower areas, two benched walls, retaining walls. They're approximately 3 feet high each. In between, and you'll see later, in between we'll be planting some greenery there as screening, but the lower tier would be accessed also off the cul-de-sac through an easement over the neighbor's 50-foot strip there, down to another processed stone area that would be used for storage of materials. And you can see up against the retaining walls to the left are a number of short walls indicating bins for various materials, crushed stone, processed stone, topsoil, that sort of thing. So because of the site has a slope on it across most of pretty much the whole thing, Jamie, if you can go to the next page. We have retaining walls around a majority of the developed area, which provide two functions. It limits the grading, well, more than two functions. It limits the grading. It'll provide sort of a curb for these processed stone areas, and it'll also limit the sprawl that generally happens on this type of a site. The stormwater is handled through the upper tier. We are going to put some, and it's hard to see on here, but there's some underground galleys that just for the roof drainage. The rest of the site pitches toward the northeast corner of that upper tier to a catch basin that would drop down under the wall and then out into that trapezoidal area to the right of the lower area, the lower tier. That whole lower tier processed stone area would pitch toward, and if you could see it at the upper end of that trapezoidal area is another little stripe section. That would be a paved leak off, a rather large paved leak off. So that area would drain across that leak off and then south into that bigger trapezoidal area.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, can you highlight the trapezoidal area that Mr. Frank was talking about?
Existing established drainage pipe that's out in that right away. Now, the reason we've done this drainage this way is because
Mr. Peretti, this is Commissioner Boda. I don't know if you are aware, and it was just me, but I think you probably dropped out for a good 45 seconds.
Oh, okay.
You were talking. I'm sorry. You were talking about the trapezoidal area, and Commissioner Basserman asked that Jamie highlight where you were talking about. I would just maybe back up a little tiny bit.
So yeah, and I don't know if I can mark on this, but
Jim, if Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I'm going to try and let you access. Oops. Oh. I think that there's a way that you can. point on this, but I'm gonna try and let you control so that you can point to stuff for people. So see if you can move the mouse around.
Commissioner Bass, I don't see a moving mouse.
There you go.
There we go. Okay.
So the area where the sorry, Jim Preddy again, the area where the arrow is right now, that's a large paved leak off. So that whole lower tier would drain toward that. And then it pitches southerly into this larger area that is surrounded by the retaining walls. So it's a contained area. But what this allows us to do is that, just given the nature of the business and the availability of the equipment, that detention area will be able to be cleaned out on a regular basis with a small a skid steer or a bobcat. So that paved leak off would actually give them access to get in there with a little machine and clean it out as frequently as needed. That whole area that's inside that retaining wall is basically being filled up. So with up to the level of the detention basin. So there's actually a good volume of soil that the water that does sit in there will have a chance to filter through, and then through the gaps in the block wall. So it's sort of dispersing it. So instead of all this water that's currently just kind of running down the hill, it will have detention time and a way to basically get broken up into much smaller areas. And then the larger storms, like I said, will discharge down through that established drainage pattern.
Mr. Preddy, this is Commissioner Rose.
Yes.
I don't see, so I see the outlet from the, what would be the southern end of the trapezoidal area. Is there a sump there, or is it, we don't see the elevations. Is water simply flowing out, or is there a sump allowing it to settle out?
So Jim Preddy again. So the water would basically sheet flow over into this area and then down through here. This is a riprap berm that goes across. So the first trapment area is here.
Okay.
And then, which could be, again, cleaned out on a regular basis, and then it gets filtered through the stone. And then this area is another detention area. The darker square area that's in front of the outlet control structure is basically a forebay that would also be riprap, but would be depressed below the outlet somewhat. So there would be a little pool there in the stone.
Is there a section, a north-south section through the trapezoidal area?
There actually is on page 5. I don't know if I can do that. See, there's a profile. So running from left to right, the top of the left end is basically where that paved area is. And then it goes down into that first section. So there's a foot and a half of that whole first area. The lower flows would filter through the stone. The upper flows has a chance to get over the top of the stone if it needed to. And then there's another catchment area to the right of that, and then some lower stone before that, right in front of the outlet control structure you can see there.
This is Commissioner Rhodes, that structure at the end, which there's a label says outlet control structure, an arrow. Where the arrow hits, is that the surface through which water drains when it gets to that elevation, or is it weaving through what looks like a horizontal slot below the top of that?
Jim Preddy, yes, there are ports on the side. So to control, because we have to also control the rate of discharge here. So we generally size the outlet control ports to not count on any infiltration, so that when we get the faster storms that we're really controlling the rate of discharge.
This Commissioner Rose, is that outlet control structure it looks as though it includes a precast sump that goes several feet into the ground. Is that what we're seeing?
Yeah, so so what I've provided is multi areas to catch any or trap any sediments. So there's a couple of bays here, and then that outlet control structure, just like a catch basin, will also have a sump that's about 4 feet lower than the outlet pipe.
Thank you.
It's Commissioner Basserman. Mr. Preddy, the before and after hydrological calculations, are they on sheet 5 or is there somewhere else?
They were in a report. Which I have here, but I believe Jamie has it as well. So on that first page is the chart. Right there, yes.
Okay.
Those are the pre and post development flows, and you can see there is a slight reduction, but we're matching pretty closely.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Perry, this is Commissioner Rose again. Is the water draining from the building roof itself being managed in some way?
Yes, and that may have been when I got cut out. There will be some underground concrete galleys in that upper tier area that would strictly for the roof, and then we would provide an overflow into that catch basin if they fill up. But generally speaking, I think that we've provided a big enough area for an inch over that 6,000 square foot roof. Yeah, it's hard to see on here, but
Mr. Preddy, this is Commissioner Basserman. The retaining wall on the right side, did you indicate that was one of the purposes of that retaining wall was to keep potential sediment from those bins from traveling off site?
Jim Preddy again. Yes. Let's see, where's this? So the retaining wall, that's I lost the mouse, Jamie.
Oh, let's see.
Okay.
Should still have it.
So this retaining wall that goes all along here and then down here would be 6 inches higher than this I like the colored boards better myself. Higher than this area here, so that it would control any of the runoff, and then the runoff would end up going only through that area into that basin. That would be the opening.
Where that jog is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Jim Preddy again, and the reason we're doing this, I mean, we have an opportunity here. It's a contractor's business, but we have a very conscientious contractor who will have equipment on site, and so I'm trying to make it readily available to clean out as necessary with the equipment that he'll already have on site. So I'm trying not to create a lot of structures, open areas that could be easily cleaned out.
Mr. Preddy, this is Commissioner Rose. So the retaining walls around the trapezoidal area, is the top of those walls level?
The top of the wall is level for the most part.
I guess we lost you, Mr. Preddy. We really lost you. You need more bandwidth.
While we're on a little pause now, can Richard silence his phone? I think it's causing a lot of feedback.
Mr. Preddy's gone completely.
Is he this Commissioner Basserman, is he showing as a participant, Jamie?
I think I just let him back in.
I'm back, Jim Preddy.
Okay.
Not sure exactly what happened. I'm a fan of the crayons on the board, so I got to be honest with you. This is
So, Mr. Preddy, this is Commissioner Rose. I was asking if the top of the retaining walls surrounding the trapezoidal area are level. And where I was going was just to know whether are those really retaining walls that rise above the highest point of the adjacent areas and remain level, or is it more just a curb at a constant elevation, constant height?
Jim Preddy, for the most part, they are constant height. You could see at the lower, I could say the lower west side of that trapezoid, the grade is a little higher, so that one would slope down, but the other sides are all pretty much level, and they above, it's about a foot above the top of that outlet control structure, so which would have an emergency grate in the top, so if it did fill up, it would have a foot of freeboard to get into that grate before overtopping.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boda, what is the, so looking at, this is for review, so it's not for receipt. How long have I don't remember seeing this before. This is the first night we're hearing it. Is that correct?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. It was received at the last meeting without a presentation because they were revising some materials. So they decided it was better to wait to present. We've received most of the materials. However, we are still waiting on authorization from the property owner of 21 Sycamore Way. I've been told that they've received verbal approval and a written letter is coming. So I would say probably should hold off on approving it for now until we have that documentation. Also, I was looking for the wetland report. I did receive a report from David Lord regarding the difference in the wetland delineation that he did versus what was previously on file. I'm going to just jump back to the existing conditions so you guys can see that difference. This was the wetland delineation that we had from a previous record. And this is the wetland delineation that was picked up by David Lord in the field, I believe April of this year. I have not received the original wetland report yet. However, he references it in the letter that goes over the difference. So, I mean, and he obviously did the delineation. So we're also waiting on that document as well.
Jamie, this is Commissioner Rose. As Commissioner Begeman requested, could you mute Dick Grinolch's, Commissioner Grinolch's line? Because we're getting a lot of feedback from him.
Sure, I will do that. Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Commissioner Grinolch, if you're having a hard time unmuting, just press, what is it, *6? And we can help you get unmuted.
Here we go. Commissioner Basserman, it would seem to me that we would need David Lord to be able to talk to the commission about the difference in the delineation and the wetland report. So I would suggest that he be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Jim Preddy, I believe he's on here. David, can you hear?
Yes, I'm on here.
How are you, Mr. Lord?
Good evening.
Can you speak, even though I guess Jamie indicated we don't have the original report, but can you speak to the difference in the delineation that you recently did?
Yes, the delineation, the difference, the boundary that is to the west of the one that I most recently put in was done back in 2004 by a different firm and a different soil scientist. In going back out there at Jamie's request to look at the difference or the reason for the difference, I had the opportunity to dig a number of test holes and spatially separate the current boundary that I set with the one that was depicted from 2004. The 2004 line has in effect a location which is up a 2-to-1 to 3-to-1 slope in its existing character. What I believe, and I've described this in my latest report dated today, is that in the interim between 2004 and the present time, the fill material which was placed on the site, and I have no idea exactly when that was, has migrated and eroded away to a certain extent. The fines and the sands and the gravels have washed out of the fill and moved down in an easterly direction, away from the toe of the slope. In short, what I'm saying is that the line from 2004 that was done by Godfrey Hoffman is present day about 2 to 3 feet or more higher in elevation than what I have flagged presently. In addition to that perspective, I've also included in the report a number of photographs which show in a northerly view along different sections of the, Jamie, if you stop, the first photograph is at flag 15. It's an example of what the slope looks like above where I have a flag. That center, it's hard to see on my screen, but there's a tree right in the center. That's where my flag is. You'll notice a large boulder to the left, which would be to the west of it, and the grade continues going up considerably as you move to the left of the photograph. Below that, there's obviously a seepage flow, wetland vegetation, and wetland soil characteristics. The second photograph is at flag number 12 on the drawing. It is on to the left side of that large green ash tree. Again, you see the slope to the left versus the lower area to the right, which is the boundary that I'm seeing on the site at the present time. It's the material and the slope to the left that goes up rather dramatically at my wetland boundary line, which is the area of difference between what I flagged presently and what was flagged back in 2004. Does everyone follow what I'm saying?
Commissioner Basserman, Mr. Lord, I think you're hitting on two issues. One is the change in elevation. Two is the composition of the soil is different now than it was whenever the original work was done.
It appears to be. Some areas do not, or I should say, some areas are not changed elevation wise. And the soils that are there do not indicate at all a wetland characteristic. Jamie, if you could move to one of the either 3 or 4. Okay, yeah, if you could move, okay, stop there. Photo number 3 shows my soil auger with a pink and black striped flag on it in the center of the drawing. You'll see it's a relatively flat area. There's actually skunk cabbage on both sides of the boundary. That's a soil bore. Or no, wait a minute, I take that back. It's actually photo number 4 that shows my auger in the soil boring location, which I did. That area where the soil auger is, I bored down with the auger to a depth in excess of 24 inches, and I found no indications of wetland soil characteristics. A later photograph will show the color and composition of the soil. Jamie, if you could move ahead to, it's either 5 or 6. There we go, 5. That's the tip of the auger. You see the brown soil color, very gravelly, sandy soil. It does not appear to have been recently disturbed or deposited as sediment, because you'll see a little bit of topsoil at the upper portion of the auger tip where it meets the shaft of the auger. That soil in its present condition is a non-wetland upland soil, which is consistent with what I have flagged on the current drawing. Photo number 6 shows a transition area. That tire is about 2 feet higher than the skunk cabbage, which is just below it or to the right. Again, that soil does not have any high groundwater table conditions. It does not have any modeling features within the upper 20 inches of the soil surface. You can move further down, Jamie, into the, okay, the last photograph, that is a picture of the vegetation within the area. And get you, let's see, that is to the west of flag number 5. That's another area that's in difference between what I have flagged presently and what was flagged in 2004. It's totally covered by a very dense stand of upland species. No wetland species were observed in this area. Again, soil borings indicated at least 20 inches of free draining brown soil material. Again, gravelly, sandy loam, no modeling to a depth in excess of 20 inches. Once you move north of flag number 5, you go more consistently with what was flagged in 2004 and what I flagged presently. Very little difference in the location of those flags. That area did not seem to have much in the way of runoff discharge from the fill material in the northwest corner of the fill slope. That area did not seem to have migrated over time like the areas in the extreme southeastern portion of the site.
Mr. Lord,
that's an overview of what I found in comparing existing conditions, my recent flagging, and what was depicted from 2004. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions that the members may have.
Mr. Lord, this is Commissioner Rose. Did you say that the 2004 boundary was 3 feet higher in elevation than yours, or the reverse?
Yes, there, the 2004 delineation is up on that slope, which is shown in that first photograph. It's as much as 3 or more feet higher in elevation up the slope to the west than what I have flagged. My flags are actually on a slight plateau area. There's another 1.5 to 2 feet of drop between where I have flagged the wetland boundary and the undisturbed wetlands to the east, the Saco soils.
This is Commissioner Rose again. Out of curiosity, in the distance between your boundary and theirs, did you find wetland soils buried beneath deposited erosion soils, or there's just a difference between your boundary and theirs by your own interpretation?
The site itself is highly variable. I found both conditions that you described. As I move closer to where I put the flag, I found buried wetland surface locations down in excess of 20 inches of the soil, which makes it not a wetland by statute. But it does have a buried horizon of wetland. It was wetland at some time in the past.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Is given the change in delineation and the composite of the site, which is, I guess, varying to say the least, is this something that we would be comfortable with a site walk on, or can we go forward without it at this point?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think it would be atypical for us to not do a sidewalk. We're in sort of atypical times, so not really sure what to do with that.
This is Commissioner Rose. I personally think that the wetland is far down gradient from the construction site, and the design has certainly addressed containing current and construction activities as well as operational activities afterward. I don't see how viewing the base of the slope would impact our judgment about the application.
Commissioner Granolch, I agree with what Eric Rose just said. I did have one question though for Jim, and could you address the sequence of operations here? In other words, are you going to build these retaining walls before you do a lot of the other work? Because they're kind of essential to prevent any erosion into the wetlands.
Jim Preddy, Criswell Engineering. Absolutely. The easternmost walls in that detention area would be the first order of business so that we could control the site and moving uphill.
Commissioner Granolch, thank you. That seems to be the best bet. And on an overall look, as an engineer, I think it's a pretty well done plan, and I think it addresses all of the problems that site has. So I feel very comfortable about the engineering that went into this.
Do you want, Commissioner Basserman, do you want to make a motion, Commissioner Granolch?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. Just a quick reminder, we don't have the authorization from 21 Sycamore Way at this point. And I think since the access to the lower level and associated grading is proposed on that activity, which the commission should really consider having that approval prior to authorizing or prior to making any approvals.
Jim Preddy, could that possibly be a condition of approval that the condition's only valid with the written authorization?
This Commissioner Rose. This Commissioner Rose, could you show us again on the plan the strip you're talking about and explain again why we're waiting for our neighbor to opine?
So this is the property line right here, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So the proposed activity is this access drive, the associated grading, and the connection of the drainage into the existing drainage pipe.
This Commissioner Rose, so the what amounts to the driveway off the end of the cul-de-sac entering the subject property is on someone else's property or town property?
Jim Preddy, that's the neighbor's property, that 50-foot strip. But unlike the one at the end of Sycamore that you were just dealing with, where the town owns it, this one's owned by the neighbor, and it must have been provided at some point for an access to that larger property. But as you well know, that wetland area and that other property is very large. It would be extremely difficult to get any kind of access down to their down into the larger property. And Mr. Fisher's spoken with the representatives there, and they have no problem with it. But unfortunately, the letter didn't make it in time for the meeting.
So this Commissioner Rose, the letter is going to address their approval of working on the site to construct this road, or is it going to be in the form of a permanent easement granting this access and establishing responsibilities for care and maintenance?
Jim Preddy, it will address both. It will address the construction and then a permanent easement once it's built.
Commissioner Basserman, given the substantive nature of what that letter needs to address, I think Jamie's recommendation that we not make this an approval tonight with a condition, but rather wait for the actual letter to make sure that it covers the areas that we feel need to be addressed, and we can then move forward at the next meeting.
Commissioner Boda, I'm inclined to agree with Chairman Basserman.
All right.
Okay, Jim Preddy again. We'll make sure we get the letter submitted prior to the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Preddy.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, real quick. If any of the commissioners wanted to go out and see the site individually prior to the next meeting, would the owner be open to that? I am.
Jim Preddy, we'd have to check, but I'm 99% sure that that's not an issue. I could get back to you via email.
Okay. Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent.
Thank you, Mr. Preddy. Next up, application for review, Inland Wetland 200401. 367, 377, 373 to 375 East Main Street. Redevelopment of existing motel, restaurant, and bank to multifamily, commercial and retail space.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This Commissioner Rose, Jamie, sorry, but could you Dick Grinalsh again? We're listening to a radio or something, and it's overpowering everything else. Sorry, Dick.
Welcome, Mr. Nuff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, my name is John Nuff. I'm an attorney with an office at 147 Broad Street in Milford, Connecticut. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicants, Metro 375 LLC and MetroStar Companies LLC. This is an application that was received at your meeting last month. You'll recall that it's an application to conduct regulated activities on the properties at 367 and 377 East Main Street. Currently, it's the Days Inn, Key Bank, and former restaurants directly adjacent to exit 55 off of I-95. I think the condition of the buildings and the site itself are rather unfortunate. I think it'd be generous to call the many portions of the site an eyesore currently, and we'll show you some photographs shortly. The property directly abuts the DOT property where the bulk of the wetlands are located. There's about 6,500 square feet on the subject parcel itself, and the property currently has no stormwater treatment of any kind. My client proposes a transformative redevelopment of the property comprised of a 143-unit residential community, 6,000 square feet of commercial retail space, and the architecture can be extremely attractive and consistent with Branford's coastal New England charm and architecture. It's a tremendous upgrade to the site and to the entire area, and will create a really charming entrance into Branford from I-95. In addition, we will be providing state-of-the-art stormwater treatment, reducing impervious coverage, and adding landscaping throughout the site. Our work is almost exclusively in the upland review area. The only direct wetland impacts is 150 square feet for the removal of a pipe. The removal of that pipe is not necessary for the project, so we're just doing that to improve the quality of that wetland. We have received comments from Jamie and from your town engineer dated May 4th. We responded to those comments and submitted those responses on May 7th. And the plans that you'll be seeing tonight reflect the changes that were made as a result of those response to comments. You're going to be hearing this evening from Dave Sacco, who's a professional engineer from TPA, and Matt Popp, who's our wetland scientist and landscape architect. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Sacco.
Good evening. My name is David Sacco. I'm a civil engineer with TPA Design Group. Jamie, are you going to be able to share the screen?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So just to be clear, you would like to, can you request the screen share or?
If I click on it, it just tells me that you've disabled screen sharing.
I'm not sure if I can at this point.
Okay.
Well, so what I can do is I can pull it up and I can let you control the mouse.
Okay.
Or I believe you can also use the annotation features if you'd prefer, so that you can use the spotlight.
Okay. Okay, again, David Sacco, TPA Design Group. This is the survey of the site, its existing condition. There's the key bank in the front of the site, the former restaurant, and then the hotel buildings along the east and south. The wetland boundary you can see along the southern perimeter of the site. This portion of the wetland limit is all either on the adjacent property at 365 East Main or on the Interstate 95 right-of-way. Just to highlight, this figure is a closer view of the wetland area and the southern perimeter of the site. The blue line is the flagged wetland limit. The portion of the wetland that extends onto the subject property is highlighted in purple. It's predominantly the southeast corner of the site. This is all the Interstate 95 right-of-way. There's a couple of photos that you can see. This is taken from behind one of the existing motel buildings, looking west and then looking east. It's the existing condition of the site. As you can see, the existing limit of disturbance, which is essentially the limit of pavement, is this heavy red line. It's very close to the existing property line and just above the wetland limit. The area of proposed disturbance is a small area in green where there's an existing storm pipe that discharges, and we're proposing to take that out of service, remove the pipe, and restore the area with some new plantings. The existing building is in light red here and here. So you can see that what we're proposing is to move the limit of disturbance closer into the site. Essentially, we have to disturb to the limit of pavement in order to do restoration planting. So in this area, we're going to be removing existing pavement. Behind the existing buildings, we'll be removing existing pavement and putting in plantings. This is the proposed grading and drainage plan. What we are proposing to do at the present time, runoff exits the site partially to the east through a series of catch basins. I'm going to go back up to the survey for just a sec. Condition at present is that the existing hotel, oops, moving too quick. The existing hotel roofs in this area, a portion of this parking lot and the parking lots and the conference center on the east end all drain into the east end of the wetland. Flow moves through the wetland, enters an existing pipe system that begins on the 365 East Main property and flows through the existing pipe, eventually discharging into the drainage system in Route 1, crossing Route 1 and into wetlands associated with the Branford River. At present, there is no retention provided on the site. There is no stormwater treatment of any kind. What we're proposing is a new storm system that is going to provide for retention through two proposed systems. We're also proposing a pervious paver pavement in this area because we're unable to connect it into a structured system. That paver system will have a deep granular layer underneath it, crushed stone, to provide sufficient water quality volume for the area that discharges there, so that we are also providing for storage, retention, and filtration. The system will be a series of structures feeding into the two retention systems. The building roofs will discharge directly to the retention systems. We will have treatment units upstream of the retention systems in both cases, and then outlet control structures to regulate the flow out into the wetland or into the downstream system. We're trying to more or less emulate the existing pattern of flow so that runoff from the eastern portion of the site reaches the wetland directly and flows through the wetland before re-entering the system. Runoff from the western portion of the site will pass through its own separate retention system and connect into the existing offsite discharge point at the same location it currently is. So what we're trying to do is emulate what is going on. In terms of peak flows, the storm drainage report has been provided and reviewed by the town engineer. We're looking at post-development flows from the peak flows. The total peak flow offsite is going to be roughly 20% of existing in a 2-year storm, rising up to 64% at 10-year, 77% at 25, and 81% at 100-year storm. The volumes are similar. We're looking at offsite runoff volume at about 50% at 2-year, rising to about 80% at the 100-year. In terms of the retention volume, the first inch of rainfall volume is roughly 14,500 cubic feet. We're providing approximately 20,000 cubic feet of retention volume. We're also matching the existing groundwater recharge volume for the site, so that we believe that the performance of the system post-development will be an improvement over existing, particularly because we are introducing treatment and retention and infiltration to the system. Just these photos were just taken yesterday, just to give you some sense of what the wetland looks like. Sorry. Stay. Okay, so these photos F through L are taken looking from areas of the site at the wetland. This is the rear of the existing motel unit. The wetland is off to the side. Again, the existing dumpster behind the building and the overgrowth. This is looking back the other way from the dumpster toward the west side. I is taken in roughly the area of the existing stormwater discharge looking toward the wetland. J is looking along the back of the motel unit looking west. This is where the wetland is closest to the existing building. K is an existing paved leak off from the upper parking lot down into the wetland. And L is a view taken from this upper parking lot looking into the wetland, and you can see an I-95 sign there. The upper photos are taken, these are views of the lower portion of the wetland that is off of the site, either on the interstate. This is the point at which the wetland terminates and re-enters the drainage outlet on 65 East Main. This is the appearance of the wetland on the Interstate 95 right away behind the property. And then this is looking up at the motel building from the Interstate 95 right away. I've included the revised planting plan. We did have some comments back from staff regarding a discrepancy between suggestions, recommendations that Matt Pop had made regarding plantings and our planting plan. We made revisions to add plantings along the perimeter and to rearrange how we were doing the remediative plantings at the wetland enhancement area that are now consistent with Matt's recommendations. Aside from that, the comments that we did get related to the performance of the drainage system with respect to the wetland and the DOT system. We have been in touch with DOT District 3, Neil Cream, to discuss any concerns that they have. They have our drainage report, they have the drainage plan. Their concerns relate to the condition of this existing pipe. They've asked us to take a look at it, inspect it. They had asked about the possibility of adding a head wall at this existing point where discharge leaves the wetland. That's something that needs to be resolved with the neighbor because it is not actually on our property. One of the comments that came up was the possibility of showing conservation easement signage along the southern perimeter of the site. One of the challenges with that is that the signs would essentially be almost on the property line, and there's concern about what that implies about the property which we don't actually own or control to the rear of the site. The intention is that the site will be restored with plantings. This will be a lawn area to facilitate fire department access with plantings along the perimeter, so that it will be clear where the more formal lawn area is, as opposed to where the undisturbed areas begin. But in terms of depicting it as some sort of a conservation easement, we have concerns about the ramifications of that since we don't actually control some of the areas in question. There were some questions regarding stormwater temporary sediment basins. We're proposing a couple of temporary sediment basins here and here. These are areas that eventually will be rain gardens as part of the permanent development. So they'll be used during the construction phase as areas where stormwater can run off and settle. Overflow will be through the proposed new yard drains. They'll be elevated within the rain gardens anyway to allow for stormwater to sit and sediment to settle out, so that by providing those in combination with some stone around the inlets to filter fabric in the grates, we can provide stormwater remediation during the construction phase in those areas. In terms of the maintaining through the wetland, I think it's important to note that the wetland is receiving what we have calculated, and what we're depicting relates to runoff from this site to the wetland. We are not calculating runoff from all adjacent sites that reaches this wetland. A significant portion of I-95 does flow to this wetland. So on the whole, while we may be diminishing runoff from our site somewhat to the wetland is still going to experience a significant runoff from Interstate 95 and other areas draining to Interstate 95 before it reaches here. One thing I'd like to point out is that we have not assumed any infiltration in any of our calculations in order to be conservative. We do anticipate there will be some level of infiltration so that our projections of reduction in runoff are conservative. And right, in terms, and one of the reasons that we're trying to target a reduction in runoff is to make sure that the performance of the existing system, which is kind of the control and factor on our analysis, is improved or enhanced. We're trying to put less stress on it than there is currently. We have not heard of any specific issues at this location, either from District 3 or from the town engineer, but just ensure that, as a result of the development, the situation is improved rather than worsened. I think with that, I'll invite Matt to see if he has any comments.
Thank you, David. Again, Matthew Pop, landscape architect, professional wetland scientist with Environmental Land Solutions. I served on Greenwich and Wetlands and Water Purchase Agency in Banica a few years ago. I was on a 16-year member. We were responsible for preparing the environmental assessment report that was submitted. I visited the site twice during this spring on March 12th. I guess that's winter, April 4th.
Mr. Pop, this is
Yes.
Commissioner Boda. It's really hard to hear you. Might you speak closer to your mic or louder, please?
Again, Matthew Pop, landscape architect, professional wetland scientist. We prepared the environmental assessment report that we submitted. I visited the site several times in March and April. As David noted, there is 5 existing buildings on the site. The days in, there's roofways, there's parking lots, patios, and landscape areas. The site is fairly gentle, fairly sloping. It's within the Branford River watershed. Mainly, one important fact is that there's no apparent stormwater treatment measures on the site. So the site just flows, rainwater just flows from the site directly across the site, sheet flow south. As David noted, the wetland is located.
Commissioner Basserman, you keep fading in and out. Are we able to capture this for the minutes, or is this not working?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I think that it keeps fading out in and out for me too, so I'm imagining it is for everyone.
This is Commissioner Begemon. It would help if everyone except the speaker is on mute. That will help us hear him, I believe.
Thank you. The wetland is located along the southern property line. It's mainly off the site. I-95 is located to the south of the wetland, just off the screen. There's one section of wetland that enters the site, as David pointed out to you. It's mainly vegetated with Phragmites, which is an invasive non-native species. Wetland itself is vegetated with skunk cabbage, red maples, and elms. The wetland buffer, if you get to the picture, the wetland buffer is about approximately 50 to 60 feet from the wetland line to the existing structure, the existing long building there. There is a paved road, there's garbage dumpsters back there, there's picnic areas, there's litter, there's wind blowing debris. And it looked to me like the wetland was probably made when they constructed I-95. There's lots of fill piles associated with that. The wetland buffer is vegetated with non-native species mainly Flora rose, autumn olive, and there's some Japanese knotweed out there. Again, non-native invasive species. The lack of the wetland buffer and the disturbance nature of the wetland buffer limit the wetland functions, the wetland, and the main functions that I found for the wetland to include are groundwater recharge, discharge, the hillsides discharge water into the wetlands. The wetland does have some sediment retention ability, especially since there's a lot of impervious surface bordering it. Vegetation within the wetland will remove nutrients, and the vegetation, the trees mainly stabilize the banks of the stream. There's also some secondary wetland functions, including some minor stormwater storage, wildlife habitat, and possibly recreational usage, such as wildlife observation. I did check the Natural Diversity Database maps dated December 2019. The site lies outside of any highlighted Natural Diversity Database area. Proposed conditions include 5 buildings being removed and construction of 7 buildings, 1 commercial building to the west, and 6 residential buildings, including 1 clubhouse. Main differences between the existing development and proposed development that I found include that this project will have a decrease in the impervious surface, approximately 5,000 square feet. Proposed buildings further away from the wetland than the current buildings, and there's significant treatment of stormwater runoff. So again, those are, I think, the 3 main features of the project. Again, the decrease in impervious surface, buildings are further away, and there's significant treatment of stormwater runoff. And just like to go through some of those treatments, stormwater runoff. As David noted, we're proposing impervious block pavers, kind of in the southeastern corner. Map. Those were reduced runoff from the site. We're proposing hydrodynamic separators, which will stormwater runoff, mainly catching sediment and trapping that before flowing into the wetlands. Proposing subsurface detention and infiltration chambers, protecting the outlet structures with stone to prevent erosion. And we have outlet control structures which will maximize floodwater storage potential. We have 1 direct wetland impact, and that is disturbing approximately 150 square feet of wetland, removing existing pipe that is abandoned. That area is currently being vegetated, currently vegetated with Phragmites. That isn't an optional impact. Again, we don't need to do that, but we figured that it would be beneficial to remove the existing pipe and to leave it. We anticipate there'll be no long-term indirect or short-term indirect wetland impacts, mainly because one is we're not going to be degrading the water quality. We're proposing a significant stormwater treatment measures, the soil concentrators, underground galleries, outlet protection, and currently there is no treatment of stormwater runoff. The site is fairly gently sloping, so we don't anticipate significant erosion control concerns on this site. We don't anticipate any groundwater recharge from the site or discharge with the development, and there'll be no loss of recreational opportunities. I did propose some recommendations to improve the wetland buffer area, and those were included on the landscape plan. One was to install a row of native bayberry buffer. That is to stabilize the soil, plants uptake nutrients, and they provide a good wildlife habitat. The second was to remove any litter from the site. That would be obviously done. Hopefully we can get that off the adjacent property too. The third was where we are removing the abandoned pipe to plant pin oak, some shads, and some spice bush. Figured that the trees, mainly the pin oak and the shads, may help to shade out some of the Phragmites a little bit. Again, those are good for wildlife habitat and they'll grow well kind of in that moist area. Those plants are proposed just not in the wetland, but just right along the wetland edge in the upland areas. And fourth, proposed if there are going to be any dog runs on the site, that they have dog waste bags and garbages so that the dog waste isn't left on the ground. I'd just like to sum up by saying, again, it's a development of a highly disturbed site. We are adding significant water improvement by the drainage treatment measures we're proposing. Again, there's no treatment of stormwater runoff currently. Reducing impervious surface, that really happens on any project that I got to work on. Again, the building is moved further away from the wetland in current conditions, getting a larger wetland buffer. Based on those conditions, those facts, this project, in my opinion, will not have an adverse impact to the wetlands. It probably will have improved the wetland functions. Any questions? Happy to answer them.
That's our presentation, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, Dave or Matt or myself be happy to answer any questions. I think you can see this a significant improvement over the existing condition, and we look forward to hearing your comments.
Yeah, Commissioner Basserman, I guess a question given the undertaking here is this going to be a phased undertaking? Can you talk to the construction sequence, the removal of the buildings, etc.?
The construction sequence, what we anticipate is that, we would go in, put in proper erosion and sedimentation controls around the perimeter. The buildings would all come down in a single action. There's not an intention to sort of phase this or retain any of the hotel facility for any purpose. So once the buildings, once the transfer occurs, that they would take care of all of that. So the first steps would be providing proper sedimentation erosion control around the perimeter as well as within the site, and then demolition, and then move on into the buildings themselves. I think the drainage would come first. Obviously, we need to control the runoff and get all of that managed so that we can work around it, and then go in with the buildings. I don't know that there's an anticipation that it'd be one building at a time, or the commercial building first. But the intent is to do everything quickly, not as a phased development.
And Commissioner Bassam, again, can you define quickly how long for the site to be stable?
David Sacco, I think what we had outlined in the erosion control and sedimentation plan was roughly a 2-year timetable from beginning of demolition to stabilization and completion.
Thank you.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Eric, it looks like you're talking, but you're muted.
So sorry. This is Commissioner Rose. What is the purpose of the pervious pavers in the, I guess, would be the southwest corner, as opposed to just letting that be grass soil?
David Sacco, the reason that we have the access drive looping around the back of the building to that area and the paver area is because we need to maintain access for service to the existing billboard at that location that is to remain. In addition, it provides a turning spot for fire vehicle, emergency vehicles. We have the roadway partly to support fire access to the rear of the building. We need a turning apron, essentially. We're using pervious pavers instead of conventional pavement there, so that we do have, for that portion of the back roadway and the apron itself, we are providing some level of retention and infiltration, as opposed to simply shedding it into the wetland.
Mr. Rose, thank you. So I'll jump in again. This is Commissioner Rose again. So as I understand it, the 3 infiltrator fields, which you refer to as 2 systems, the first inch of water produced what sounded to me like 50% or maybe it was 60% of the total capacity of those 3 infiltrator fields. And in a 100-year storm, you would be 80% of the current off-site after the infiltrator fields were constructed. Was that a goal established by tables and rules, or is there an opportunity for you to do more infiltrators and retain more water on site?
The spatial challenge is kind of limits what we're able to do. I mean, what we were trying to do was a few things. First, we wanted to satisfy the requirements of the zoning regulations in terms of providing at least the first inch of rainfall as retained volume. We wanted to diminish the rate and volume of runoff at the various storm levels consistent with the zoning regulations. And the third component was that, knowing we're reliant upon connecting to a discharge point that off-site, we wanted both the discharge point from the wetland out of the site and the direct discharge from the site to Route 1. We wanted to ensure that those systems were had less burden on them in the future than what they have now. So those were the goals that we were trying to work toward. Increasing the amount of infiltration becomes challenging just because we have spatial limitations. Trying to satisfy what the developer is seeking in terms of his development, managing all of the other utility services that need to be provided to all of the buildings. This is about what we can practically provide, and it's accomplishing the regulatory guidelines, in fact, exceeding what they're asking.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Rose again. So the choke point, for lack of a better word, ultimately is you're trying to strike a balance between reducing the current status quo, retaining what would be required by regulation, but also, and the choke point is not overburdening the pipe that leaves the property, and finding that balance so they all continue to work, because the pipe leaving the property is the pipe, and that you need to outflow out of without overwhelming it, because you haven't retained enough. Is that a correct understanding?
David Sacco, yes, that's correct. I mean, ultimately, we are connecting into a DOT system in Route 1. We need to demonstrate to their satisfaction that we are not burdening their system any more than it currently is. And in fact, we're trying to unburden the system, I guess you could say. So that's our ultimate goal, is to, satisfy, to create a better situation, because we are providing retention where there is none. We're providing treatment where there is none. We're providing for the possibility of infiltration, which will tend to make the situation better than we're depicting, and satisfy that, ourselves that the downstream condition is improved rather than worsened.
Thank you. Commissioner Rose again. So the pipe that is being removed that currently flows or outlets into the wetland that's on site, that's being taken away. What was the source of that drainage, and what did you do to replace it by other means?
That pipe is serving sort of the easterly portion of the site. There's a number of catch basins behind the hotel building and a few in front of the hotel building. Some of the roof leaders appear to tie into that. So it's currently discharging water from the sort of southeastern third of the site. It's not picking up, it doesn't directly pick up any flow from off-site. It's strictly flow that's within the site discharging. So what we're doing is creating a new system to serve that portion of the site, and we're discharging it elsewhere. We did not maintain that point of discharge for several reasons. For one thing, the elevation is quite high. It makes it very difficult for us to achieve retention, but because of the elevation at that point, we don't want to have to dig into the wetland to create a lower discharge point. By moving a few hundred feet west, we can discharge, our outlet pipe can be at a lower elevation, still be outside of the wetland limit, and give us a lot more flexibility in terms of providing adequate retention and infiltration.
So thank you for that. So the substitution for that outlet is the same area, the paving areas, the roof water, those are now being discharged into the infiltrator fields or somewhere else?
Correct. The areas, essentially the building at the east side of the site and along the south side of the site, the adjacent driveway areas will all be going to a series of catch basins and yard drains. They will route through a hydrodynamic separator into an infiltrator system, which is in front of building C, the southerly building, and then it will discharge through an outlet pipe toward the wetland. At the outlet pipe, we have an energy dissipator in order to bring any discharge velocity down to a non-erosive velocity at the point where it enters the wetland.
Thank you.
Jamie Frederick, in the wetland agent. I have a couple of questions regarding the response to staff comments. You mentioned that DOT District 3 has reviewed the drainage and mentioned that there was a request that maybe the head wall be replaced, and that he commented a need to periodically clean out the area by the pipe inlet. Do you know what the time frame is on whether or not you're going to be doing that head wall replacement? Is that going to be part of this project? Because if so, it should be part of what the commission's reviewing. And I guess, is there anything in the application materials addressing what that maintenance would be for future clarification down the road when that activity occurs?
Jamie, it's John. I'll let Dave respond to most of that, but right now the head wall replacement is not part of the application. Certainly, if that became a requirement to the extent it involves regulated activity, we'd have to come back to the commission, but it is not currently part of the proposal.
Right. The head where the DOT has suggested a head wall would be replaced is not on the property. This is something that came up subsequent to our actual application. So it's something that we had not incorporated into the plans because we weren't aware that it was a concern. So if it's something that we confirm with DOT that they feel is appropriate to do, and this can be arranged with the adjacent property owner, then it would be the subject of a follow-up action.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I want to just make a quick clarifying point regarding the conservation area comment. I had added that to my comments prior to seeing the comments suggested by Matt Pop regarding the plantings. I think the plantings could accommodate what I was looking to achieve. That's ultimately up to the commission to decide. I just wanted to offer a little bit of clarity there. And then the other question I had was regarding the snow storage areas. A lot of them seem to be where there are trees. So I just thought maybe since Matt Pop's here, he can comment on whether or not that would have a negative impact on those plantings or be problematic.
Just from knowing the developer, he's very particular on the landscaping of the projects. So I would think that the land itself would not be placed directly on adjacent to a tree, but in between them. But Mr. Smith is very particular again on the landscaping. He goes over the landscape plans with me quite often. After construction, we review them. So I would say that they shouldn't impact the trees.
Jamie, this is Commissioner Rose. Can you show us the plan where those snow retention areas are?
Jamie Frederick.
It was attached to the response to comments.
Take off.
So Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, it looks like they're proposing snow storage in these islands where there are also trees proposed, and along the base of these trees, over in this area, which only has one tree. Yeah, and the landscaping islands essentially.
Right, and there's some snow areas, for example, along the road that loops up and back behind Building D as well. What we were avoiding was having any areas that were on the south side of the site to avoid having areas where snow melt would just be discharging salty water into the wetlands directly. We wanted to keep them, as far as practical, away from the wetland area.
This is Commissioner Rose. Jamie, do we concern ourselves historically with chemical ice and snow removal or control?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So I think the commission has, I think generally the main concern is making sure that snow is not being pushed towards wetland areas, particularly if it does contain some of those de-icing agents. Maybe some of the other commissioners can speak.
This is Commissioner Boda. Yeah, this is an issue that we have frequently asked with some of these larger projects. I was wondering also about the location of snow in the winter. So I was glad that that was clarified now. And I was additionally wondering about the impact of any of that snow piling onto the rain gardens and how that might potentially impact the plantings that were planned for those areas.
The two rain garden areas are actually back from the paved areas, so that it's unlikely that any snow would end up in them. There's one just to the east of Building B, and then the other is between Building A and Building B. So neither of them is really in an area where you'd use heavy snow clearing equipment and be dumping significant amounts of snow. They might get a little bit of what is shoveled from the walks, but nothing like the volume that is going to come off the roadways and parking areas.
Is Commissioner Bass, I'm struck by, I guess, the size, the small size, it looks like, of the storage, snow storage areas. Can you give me some idea of, does that accommodate a 6-inch storm, or does it accommodate a storm up to a foot? As I try to look at the areas that you've designated as storage with what appears to be a very large impervious surface area that would need to be plowed.
When this was done, Oliver assumed that we would have a 6 to 8 inch snowfall, and that these areas would be, have 3-to-1 side slopes that be a maximum height of about 6 feet. If you look closely, if you zoom in, each of them has an assumed volume. I believe that there's actually a table summarizing how this was arrived at on the drawing itself.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Rose. Mr. Sacco, can you remind us of what you said in terms of existing impervious surface versus final impervious surface with the proposed area?
I'm going to refer to the drainage plan for a second. There is, let's see exactly what I said. 9. The existing impervious area is 3.67 acres. The proposed impervious area is 3.55 acres. That's out of an overall property area of, I believe, 6.44 acres.
Thank you.
This Commissioner Basserman, it is I would say difficult, given the size of the project and the drawings that you're having to look at best with a 15.6-inch screen. So it's difficult without seeing the plan and laid out, where you can actually look at the notes and the soil reports, etc. One man's difficulty, I guess. I don't know if anybody else feels the same way.
Commissioner Rose, it is difficult, for whatever that's worth.
This is Commissioner Boda. So in looking at the one map that I do have, which has grading, drainage, erosion control, narrative, landscaping, miscellaneous details, and one other, emergency access. The information here, I'm not finding clear keys on it. And so, for example, when I want to see a little bit more detail about those mounds where the spots where snow would potentially be stored, and I'm looking for some detail, and it's hard for me to discern what it is that I'm looking at. I don't see a key on that page, and so then if I go to the detail sheet, I'm just not sure how I am to discern what those dots represent, or if there's any kind of depth. Can you clarify how I can see that? It's usually not this challenging to decipher. And that could be Mr. Pop, that could be it could be Mr. Sacco.
Yeah, I'm just trying to bring up that drawing in front of myself so I can refer to it.
So I'm specifically right now looking at the landscaping plan, drawing number 6. But I think that whether I'm talking about drawing number 6 or drawing number 3. So another example, on drawing number 3, the underground galleys. I see the energy dissipator, I see the temporary sediment trap, but I'm not seeing the details that I would typically want to see for that. Like, I don't care about the ornamental poles, but they're on here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what you're looking at was only the plans that were revised in response to the comments we received from staff. The infiltrator systems, the treatment units, everything is fully detailed out in the complete drawing package. I understand that getting something at 11 by 17 is difficult, and looking at it on a tiny screen is an enormous nuisance.
Hey, David, it's John Nuff. I'm sorry to interrupt, but perhaps you could help all the commission members if you can just simply indicate or confirm that no matter where the snow storage is located, it's going to be treated before it goes offsite or goes into any wetland or water course.
Right.
Commissioner Boda, so I think, so to Attorney Nuff's your assertion, I think it is difficult for the commission or myself, I'll speak for myself, to be able to ask the thoughtful questions that we need to ask if we can't pull out the details from which we're trying to make a determination. And so I don't know that I want like the huge full size plan set. I don't, but I think that some of these particular drawings that we tend to care about the grading, the drainage, the sediment and erosion control, the narrative and the details, the landscaping plan with the details. There's a handful of sheets, and maybe we can itemize what those are for you, or we can do that with Jamie. And if we can then get the details of what is in here without a key, I think that would, at least again for myself, that would go a long way in assuring me that I know what I'm looking at, and therefore I have had the ability to ask the appropriate questions. Given at this point that we haven't looked for a peer reviewer, I think that's a very minimum for us.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Suzanne, the plans that you're looking at, are they attached to a letter?
Yes.
Okay, so those are revised plan sheets. You should have received a plan set previously with a full, so I think a lot of those details that you're looking for are in the full plan set, which would have been mailed out to you a month ago.
I'm gonna mute myself for a second so you don't hear all the rustling.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. So while Suzanne's looking for that, basically I reviewed the plans that were submitted by the applicant, and they submitted a response letter to the comments I sent them, and attached that were the revised plan sheets. So some of these pages address the comments that I had sent over to them for review.
This is Commissioner Kraus. Can I just ask one question to get my bearings straight? I'm looking at the packet of information, and it shows the little grade area as to where this is. But then when I go in a few pages, it shows that it abuts Featherbed Lane. And I'm having trouble figuring out where this is, because it's so close to the highway, and Featherbed Lane is beyond the turnoff to 139.
This is Commissioner Rose. I looked at the same thing, and if you look at Google Maps, you'll see there's a dead-end road that comes off of Featherbed Lane, which is unlabeled on Google Maps, and it makes a dog leg north, if you will. There's 3 parcels, 3 houses up against this property on that dog leg off of Featherbed Lane. So that is what it is, and I don't know what that dog leg is. It's got to
right. But when I look on the map and it says number 25 Featherbed Lane, number 23 Featherbed Lane, being directly behind Building D, right, I can't find where that is, because Featherbed Lane is not in the same place as depicted on this map, this gray area on the map on the front page.
That's because the road that those 3 lots are on isn't actually Featherbed Lane. It's got to be Featherbed something, but on Google Maps, it's a dog leg dead end road off Featherbed Lane.
Okay, but the names of the property owners they have on there do in fact live on Featherbed Lane. That's what I just Googled. So I'm just confused. I'm just trying to figure out where this site is.
Well, the site is it's a triangular parcel. It's bounded on the south by Interstate 95. The west and northwest is US Route 1, and then to the east is properties that are labeled as Yeah, if you page down to the survey, I think it's,
See, when I'm looking at that gray thing, it doesn't go anywhere near Featherbed Lane, but then when I look at your map, Building D looks like it's very close to Featherbed Lane.
well, the properties to the east of the site have addresses on Featherbed Lane. They're deep parcels, and that's what the addresses are listed as.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Without looking into it, it sounds like these parcels are addressed Featherbed Lane, but they may not have frontage or significant frontage actually on Featherbed Lane.
So this is Commissioner Bodas. Can you go back to the site, the like page drawing number 3?
Sorry, I'm just pausing right now, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, because I'm realizing, oh wait, yep, we are looking for this one. I'm sorry, page 3?
Yes, Commissioner Boda, yes. So Commissioner Kraus, this is Commissioner Boda. So my interpretation, my understanding is that, so now if you were to what is it now, like Margaritas, you know where the old Margaritas is and the car wash, and so that would be approximately somewhere around building E right here. And so if you were to then move forward and go onto East Main Street and turn right, you would hook onto and turn right again, you would be on Featherbed, and then there is that little funny little jog off of it. So it may just be that because of the way this map is, it gives a weird perspective. But so this would be where Margaritas is, and then across the street is that gas station that has the sneaky little Dunkin' Donuts in it. Don't tell anybody for 7 a.m. drive through. And there's the little car wash right fronting.
Yep, I know exactly where that is. But what's confusing me is on the map on the cover, or the little schematic on the cover, I would be driving by with Margaritas on my right. I would come to 139, and then I would come to Featherbed Lane on the right. So that's what's confusing me. I don't understand how the back of that parcel is backing up to Featherbed Lane.
If I can explain for a sec, this is David Sacco again. As Commissioner Rose was mentioning, the 3 parcels that back up against this lot are interior parcels. They have access to Featherbed Lane by a private drive. Okay. So there's a whole series of lots that fronts on Featherbed Lane, and then at the south end of Featherbed Lane at I-95, you hook back in behind those, and you reach 3 parcels which have street addresses on Featherbed Lane, but they don't have direct frontage on Featherbed Lane. And those are these 23B, the parcels that are shown on the right-hand side of the drawings.
Okay.
Commissioner Boda, again, just to clarify, Jamie, that I've looked through the materials that I have. I don't have another plan set for this site.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I can mail you a copy.
Commissioner Boda, that would be helpful. Thank you.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, this was received last meeting.
It's stamped April 7th.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, yes, it was.
So our time frame on this is what?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So you have, if no public hearing is held Must take action within 65 days of receipt without extensions. If a public hearing is held, the public hearing must start within 65 days after receipt. So
the first question
days.
I guess we have is this, Commissioner Basserman. The first question we have is this project requiring a public hearing in anyone's estimation?
Commissioner Boda, Jamie, have you received any public interest in this application via a wetlands issue?
Jamie Frederick, in the Wetland Agent. I have not received any correspondence or calls regarding this application.
Commissioner Boda, yeah, I wouldn't, I don't see a cause to move this to public hearing. It's a large application, but there's not I wouldn't put it under a significant activity, nor would I put it under the public interest section of our regs.
As Commissioner Basserman agreed. So let's go back to the time frame then. If it was received in April, do we need an extension if we are going to review this again at the next meeting?
Jamie Frederick, in the Wetland Agent, you would not need an extension at this time.
Okay. Might I suggest then that the commission take a look at the details, not only the change that I guess was mailed out, but some commissioners may not have received the original package as well. Did we review that material, look for the details that we think are important for the further discussion of this, and then deal with this again at our June meeting?
Commissioner Boda, I would be in agreement.
Commissioner Rose, I agree with that.
Jamie, it's John Nuff. Obviously, you know, if you want to speak to the commission members, if there's anything else that they need, you know, larger size sets of the revised plans or anything like that, obviously you can communicate with David or myself, and we'll make sure that you get whatever you need in whatever format you need, whatever size you need, and the number that you need, and we'll get those to you as quickly as possible.
Sounds good. Jamie Frederick, and the Wetland Agent. So Suzanne would like a reduced size copy of the full plan set. Is that correct, Suzanne? Or do you want a full?
Commissioner Boda, I think that's fine. That'll I don't know that I need to peel through specific pages. There's only a handful of pages that I would really be interested in, but if it's easier, I can email you tomorrow with a list or the full plan set. It's fine.
Jamie Frederick, in the Wetland Agent. We have the full plan set, so I can just send that to you.
That's Commissioner Boda, that's fine.
Jamie Frederick, in the Wetland Agent. Does anyone else need or want a copy of the plan set and or a comment letter? Because we only sent out paper copies as requested at a previous meeting. Everyone else is good?
Okay. It is now 9:45. We have a deliberation next regarding inland wetland 191101. We've been at this for 2.25 hours. I suggest a 5-minute break, get up, stretch, etc., and then we'll reconvene in 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll see you next month.
Thank you very much.
Peter, what time are we going to start again?
Let's see, 9:52.
Oh,
And by my calendar, it's 9:51 right now.
okay.
All right, I think we can reconvene the meeting of May 14th of the Inland Wetland Commission. Next up on our agenda is the deliberation on Inland Wetland 1911-01, 1151 West Main Street for a bank and grocery store. First up, before we get into the actual deliberations, let's see. Sandy, I think you were present for some of the meetings that we had on this particular application. I need you to attest that you have reviewed the material for that meeting, that you did not make in attendance, and that you feel qualified to deliberate this evening.
Didn't I attest to that last meeting?
But I believe you have to attest.
Attest to the beginning, yes. I listened to the beginning of the last meeting.
Fine, thank you. Is there any commissioner that needs to recuse themselves from this evening's deliberations? All right, we can move forward then. You should have.
This is Commissioner Bagman. Was I in at the, I don't know if I have heard all of this or not.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So Clarice has previously recused herself from this because she was not a commissioner when the public hearing was open and did not attend any of the public hearing meetings. I think we also have Commissioner Grinalsh on the line, and I think he missed a couple meetings, so he would also need to make a statement that he has caught up and is qualified to vote, or should recuse himself as well. Everyone else, I believe, was present at all the meetings or has already made a statement.
Commissioner Grinalsh? I think we may have lost him.
Let me unmute him real quick.
He's muted, I see that.
Can you hear me?
We can now.
Okay. I did not attend the site walk or a couple of the meetings, so I am not able to, act on this. So I'm recusing myself.
Thank you. So let me take count here. We have Commissioner Rose, Commissioner Boda, Commissioner Basserman, and
Sullivan.
And where's Commissioner Sullivan? I don't see him on my list here.
And Commissioner Kraus.
And Commissioner Kraus. All right, so we have a quorum. Oh, there you are. Thank you, Steve. All right, we can move forward then.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Just to clarify, Clarice, are you recusing yourself again for this matter?
Commissioner Begeman, I recuse myself.
Thank you. We have a draft resolution that was emailed out in advance of this evening's meeting. It's 4 pages. Jamie, question. This is your encapsulation of basically what we have said over the last couple of meetings, putting in the form of a resolution.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Yeah, so I put together this document based off of the deliberations and review with town council.
Okay. Have the commissioners all identified the document and reviewed it and would like to either attest to it in its completeness or make any changes or amendments to the document? And I open that up for discussion.
This is Commissioner Rose. I would just like to say that I think the draft resolution is extremely thorough and certainly, to my recollection, hit in detail all the issues that were raised, and it was really a well done job. Thank you.
This Commissioner Basserman, yes, I concur. This kind of becomes a new standard for us, all right? And that the level of detail and the inclusion of the standard conditions in the resolution should make things easier if we have to reflect back on this for any reason in the future. Is there any further discussion on any of the items on page 1? Moving on to page 2. Any additional edits, comments on page 2? Likewise, page 3. Are we prepared to move forward with Inland Wetland 1911-01 1151 West Main Street.
I am.
Commissioner Sullivan, I'm prepared to move forward.
Do we need a motion, or can we take a vote right now? Jamie?
Jamie,
Commissioner Boda, there would need to be a motion to adopt the resolution as to approve the application.
Chairman Basserman, this is Commissioner Rose. I would like to make a motion that the commission vote to adopt the draft resolution dated May 14th, 2020, prepared by Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent, regarding the inland wetland application number 19.11.01 as drafted, pages 1 through 4.
That sounds like a complete motion. Do we have a second?
Steve Sullivan, I second the motion.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, we're going to do a roll call vote. Let's see, Commissioner Rose, how do you?
Aye. Commissioner Rose, aye.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Commissioner Sullivan, aye.
Commissioner Boda.
Commissioner Boda, nay.
Commissioner Kraus.
I'm going to abstain.
Commissioner Bassett, yay. We covered everybody's. So if I got that count right, there's 4, 1, 3.
3 yes, 1 abstain, and 1 no. Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So that would be a majority and it would pass.
I think I should say thank you, but I haven't seen the resolution. I'm assuming this is a motion to approve.
Correct.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Yes, John, I just saw your email. It is available in the Dropbox.
Okay.
And I've been trying to email it to you and do the meeting at the same time, and it hasn't
Gotcha.
worked.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Next up, we have some enforcement activity. CC 190901, 7680 Pent Road, clearing along a water course and wetland. Any update, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So this item has kind of been tabled because of the application reviews that have been going on. Back in February, the property owner did submit a planting plan, and the commission has not gone over that yet. So I think that the next step would be to discuss that with the property owners, and they are on the call. So let me pull up that information.
This is Commissioner Rose. Jamie, have you reviewed their plan, and do you have any thoughts on it?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I am not really up to date on the history of this violation since it did start before I was in this position. I'm not sure if it's the level of plan that the commission was looking for or not, because I'm not sure what direction the applicant was given. So I don't have too many thoughts. I think I'd like to see what the commission has to say before going too far. So just to recap, the issue was clearing, and the owners were told to submit a planting plan. And I will screen share that.
This is the one, they were at the February meeting, but it ran too late, so they had to leave. Is this is that one, right?
Maybe
Yes.
Frederick, and yes, that's correct.
Yes, okay.
So they're looking to, it's not really, it doesn't show where they're proposing the plantings. This page is from a 2005 plan that was done by their soil scientists at the time, and they
That's the plan I submitted.
have indicated, I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I know that the property owners are here, and if they would like, I can turn. I don't think I can rotate the plan. Sorry, everyone. So there's an intermittent water course right here, and there was some clearing that occurred. And they're supposed to propose a planting plan. And so basically they have a list of plantings. And I apologize again that it's sideways. I discussed with the property owners earlier today that the 2005 planting plan on the western side of the water course, which is the area that was impacted, they had proposed, the soil scientists they had hired proposed shrubs on, let me just double check that I'm right here, 15-foot spacing. So I can.
Commissioner Bassett, but just for clarification, so we have a planting list.
Yeah.
We do not have a planting plan indicating location and
No.
all of that.
No. So for reference, I'm gonna open this up in a separate tab, and I'm gonna pull up the 2005 plan for you guys real quick.
This is Commissioner Rose. In pulling up 2005 plan, are we looking at that because that's what is being proposed to be done, or what?
I'm pulling it up because this is basically a variation of that. So I think
I see that you stamped it February 13th. So
Wait, can I say something? That was already done.
Inland Wetland Agent Jamie Frederick, can you just announce who you are for the record?
Sure. So
No,
this
not
is
so you
Lisa.
were. Oh, sorry.
This is, sorry, we're new to this. So this is Lisa Muzzy. So that western side has already been done.
No,
This has already been done.
That's the western side?
Yes, it's already been done. So it's the other side of the water course that will be done equally to, there's already trees on the eastern side. So my proposal is that I would plant native shrubs and wildflowers in between the native shrubs, 15 feet apart, the same as what is there. The trees are already on the eastern side, but what you're seeing here is the plan that was already done in 2005.
Not the color part.
This is Commissioner Kraus. I think I recall from one of our previous meetings with these property owners that they had a plan that was approved by Diana Ross, and
Yes.
that's the plan that they have been implementing. If anybody else remembers differently, please correct me.
this is Commissioner Rose. Well, let me add to that. Just based on what the owner just said, you're saying that the plan in front of us from 2005, you have already executed and effectively replanted all of these plants, because the reason for the violation is all the plants were gone as a result of the work on the property.
No, those plants are all still there. The work that was done was on the other side of the water course.
Amy.
This is Lisa Muzzy, the property owner. All these plants are still there. All the trees are still there, except for two trees that rotted from water. They died because there's too much water. They couldn't survive. Their roots rotted out.
The wetland killed them.
Well, they're not. That's whatever it is.
Intermittent water course.
They were on top of the water course. They did not survive because it was the soil was too wet.
That come from the street. The water went up on the street.
So these are all still there, except for two. I believe they were oak trees up by the street area. But there are other trees that have come in since there that I've allowed to grow. So this all on the western side is still there. It's the east. Yes, it's the eastern side that all the prickers and the invasive species were all eliminated. And what I was proposing was to do a similar plan. And I don't think this is a plan that I submitted because I actually put in a planting plan.
Well, you can't see it because it's the color's out. It's colored out.
This is what Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. This is what
So you see the different color.
you have to identify yourself.
Hi, this is John, owner. So you see the different color, like the red, the green. It doesn't come out that clear with this one. And then red says, I don't know, reduce ryegrass. The red is arborvitae. And then if you move up a little bit, the yellow is where we were going to replant. That's where the vegetation was taken from on the opposite side of the stream from the house.
So the eastern side.
Is that the eastern side?
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure. Do we have a copy?
So we don't need trees on that side because there are I think there are 4 or 5 trees on that side. What we were proposing was that we would do native shrubs 15 feet apart down the water course and including other native plants, and the native plants are the native flowers that are listed on the paperwork. And what I talked to Jamie about today was that because of the COVID situation, I've been out of work and home, and I'm still going to be out of work until the 26th. So that I was hoping that the board would approve at least a partial part of this plan so I could get started, because I do have some plants, and then we could reconnect. We could reconnect at the next meeting, and I'd be happy to add more plants if needed. I'd be happy to change things. I'll do whatever the board feels necessary. Jamie has photos that you can look at as far as the whole field and that whole area of where the silt fence is put in. It's all growing back. So she can show you that everything that was there is growing back except for the prickers and the invasives. So there's wildflowers, there's all kinds of wildlife growing in there, probably, I don't know how many feet tall, but she'll show you the pictures of what's growing there. And that's the street. The water course is completely dry right now.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Is it possible to get a plan showing where these new shrubs and flowers are going to go, so that in the future there's no confusion as to what was done and what the full picture looks like when it is done?
Well, I was told that the board's jurisdiction was 3 feet. So what I said at the last meeting when I spoke to the board was, okay, I will plant 3 feet from the top of the water course and replant 3 feet. And that's what my plan was, to fill up 3 feet from the top of the water course, which is where the silt fence is actually 3 feet from the outside of the top of the water course.
That's
This
So-
is Mr. Rose. My recollection, I think there's a misunderstanding here. As I recall, what we said was it was 3 feet, within 3 feet of the center line of the water course along the entire length of the water course,
Right.
not 3 feet at the top of the water course.
Oh,
And not to be a killjoy here, but we asked for a plan and we got a cartoon showing ryegrass on the side of the water course we expected a plan for. We don't have a plan. We need a plan, and then we can all review it. But a list of plants go with a plan to give us types and quantities of the plants that the plan depicts. We're lacking a plan. We need a plan.
okay. So my dilemma is I have a few weeks before I go back to work full time. I would love to use this time to start the plan. I will give you my word and you can check back in and send people down and we can implement it as we go if you'll work with me. But I can buy native plants. Okay, and I will go within 3 feet from I was planning on going 3 feet beyond what you're telling me. But I will plant the 3 feet from the middle of the water course and beyond, if you'd like, of native plants and flowers. And I listed all of what I was going to list, and the field is growing back. There's no, and then we can reconnect at the next meeting. I just hate to lose this week and a half of me sitting home biting my nails.
So this is Commissioner Rose. You can tell by the plan that was done in 2005 and the one that was the same one which was stamped in February that this is not a highly technical plan.
Of course.
It is all of those cute little circles and squigglies that you see on the east side of the water course needs to go on the west side of the water course. If you folded that thing in half and made a mirror of the west side on the east side and gave it to Jamie, we would probably be done. But you're asking the commission to simply fly by the seat of our pants without something to approve and a document that will ultimately be representative of what you're going to be the caretaker for as long as you own the property and subsequent owners own it. So just take that plan. You could literally just mirror what's on the west side on the east side and you'd be done, and put quantities next to the names of the things that you listed and you'd be done.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Kraus. Could I speak? I think what we're trying to do here is get this situation corrected. I think we have a homeowner that's been extremely cooperative, has showed up for meetings, who actually was pushed off because of our schedule in February. I don't know if there's any precedent for this, but this is a good time to start planting. I know that we have used this as a reason in the past to let people begin work because of a planting season. I can recall 2 specific examples where we did this. So what I would like to propose is, even though there's no plan that meets the guidelines of what the commission is looking for, if the homeowner plants sort of at their own risk and we come out and inspect it and say it's not good enough, if they agree then that they will make the modifications, why can't we make some kind of a motion to give them a chance to rectify the situation, but not lift the restraining order that's in place?
Jamie, Frederick, and the wetland agent, kind of in reflection to what everyone's been talking about, I think looking at the 2005 planting plan might help help guide this conversation. So I'm going to throw it up on the screen share real quick. because it does show plantings in the area that was impacted. And I think that maybe the commission could look at how working with that and the property owners might work. This is the 2005 description of the planting plan. I'll jump down to the planting plan real quick so you guys can see the spatial component of it. So they're showing shrubs spaced 15 feet along the side of the water course, which was the impacted side.
So this is Commissioner Rose. This is a different plan than what we were looking at a minute ago.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. Yes, this is the original plan. You can see it looks like the property owners took this plan and kind of marked it up. So I'm not sure exactly what the commission.
So the, can I interject? This is Lisa, the property owner. I did above and beyond what was asked for. And that's what I'm trying to tell you now, is that I will do above and beyond. I don't want to plant more trees because the trees are already there. And so what that last commissioner stated about working with me and leaving it open and you can come back and check it and okay it, I will take that risk. I just don't want to plant more. The planting plan on the western side had more trees. I don't want to plant more trees. I want to plant shrubs and ground cover and native flowers and things like that so that I can look across and see the field, because the field is a meadow. It's part of my property. I can't really, it's really unusable, but it's still pretty to look at. So that was my plan. I didn't realize that my husband submitted a plan that didn't actually have, I thought we submitted something that actually outlined plants. And I could have swore that we did, and I don't know what happened to it. I gave it to David, and so I'm a little bit confused, but I'm all for what that commissioner said about working with us, if that's possible.
So this is Commissioner Boda. I would be generally in agreement with Commissioner Kraus in that this is not an application. This is a cease and correct. And so, and given the nature of the growing season and that a month from now, we're going to be getting really into the heat of the summer. And so it would make sense to get these plants into the ground. And so, taken that idea along with what Commissioner Rose said about really, I understand your concern about the trees, but essentially, aside from that, taking that plan that we're looking at and mirroring it, such that those other plants are on the other side. I would say if you could bring that to Jamie just as another pair of eyes, then I would, and Jamie had an opportunity to look at it before you started sinking plants into the ground. And Jamie, knowing that our intention is that the other side is vegetated with a mix of plants and shrubs, then I would be fine with that being where we leave off, and that there be an update at next month's meeting with the plants that are in the ground, and a map with something that we can put in our files that document what should be there for future information.
Also do it as we go along.
Could I comment?
Sure.
Thank you. Suzanne, Commissioner Suzanne, this is Lisa Muzzy. So if I mirror this plan, that's 40 feet from, it's not 3 feet, that's 40 feet. I did 40 feet of planting probably from the water course on the western side. So you're asking me to plant 40 feet and not 3 feet? because if I mirrored that, that's what I would be doing. And I really don't want to plant 40 feet because
No, this is Commissioner Boda. My intention is not that you do 40 feet. You're going to be like pushing up against your house.
No, I'm talking about on the field side. The
No.
40, this is the plantings that this plan shows is pushing up against my house. That's what's already there.
Yeah. So, no.
This is clear.
Commissioner
Bagamon with the suggestion.
Help you get what it is that you are asking for right now so that we can move forward. So let me clarify by saying, I think that if we look at the past planting plan, we look at the narrative that was given, you go to the wetland office and talk to Jamie and verify, like, this is what you're looking at planting. You can go ahead and sink those plants in before our next meeting, knowing that our next meeting is mid-June and it's going to start to get really hot for those plants.
Right.
So I'm trying to help you.
Yes, I understand
where you want to go.
Yes,
and so we can move forward. I don't think we don't need to belabor this. We do need something that formalizes what's on the property.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Kraus, and I understand that you don't want to plant the trees right now because of your view. So if, just to elaborate on what Commissioner Boda said, if you don't want to plant the trees, and then at the next meeting after Jamie has taken a look at what you've done, at that time, if you need to add trees, that can be our recommendation.
Okay.
If everybody else agrees with that.
I think ultimately we need to have an identification of plant species on a location map. It sounds to me like what Commissioner Boda and Commissioner Kraus has suggested is that you show up at well, I don't know if you can show up at the wetland office now, but you can somehow have communication with Jamie as to what it is that you want to do on that initial planting, and then you have an opportunity for a correction at the next meeting.
Okay, this is Lisa Muzzy, property owner. Thank you for your comments and your advice. I just want to verify there already are trees on both sides of the western and eastern. It's not the trees that I'm concerned about. I planned on planting the native shrubs and the flowers and the ground cover. So the trees are already there, and I would be happy to work with Jamie. She's already offered to come out to the property, and I will be happy to make any changes or additions if needed at the next meeting.
Commissioner Basserman, Jamie, does that work for you?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. Yeah, so I don't think that the violation was really removal of trees so much as it was removal of invasive species and shrubs, but I was not here, so I'm not sure. So my understanding would be that if they kind of take the 2005 planting plan and move in that direction with native species, that could be something they get the ball rolling on, and then documentation's provided what was planted where, and the commission can kind of check in on the status of what has been done at the June meeting and decide whether more plantings need to be done or not.
Commissioner Boda, so just to elaborate, I would recommend, in addition to the planting drawing that's submitted, that there's photographs taken so that we can see really clearly what's happening or the work that's been done.
Sure. And there's photographs that are available to you now. Lisa Muzzy speaking. I've already supplied photographs of all the trees that are there now and all the growth that's already going on in that area. and the water course and the state of the water course and the silt fence. Jamie has all those photographs for you if you want to look at them tonight.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I can show those to you guys if you would like. I think Larry's or Commissioner Benjamin, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to say last name, had a comment.
No, Commissioner Bagman, it's been taken care of.
Yeah.
So that's at the street.
Commissioner Basserman, given the fact that it's 10:30 and we got a few more items here, et cetera, I suggest we kind of put the onus back on the applicant and Jamie to get this thing done, and we'll look at photos next meeting.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. That is fine. These pictures are in the Dropbox if anyone wants to look at them prior to the next meeting.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Notice of violation 7680 Pent Road, clearing of vegetation, establishment of lawn beyond permitted area. Update on this one, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I don't believe we have anyone here for this. I'm just going to double check our participant window real quick.
Good night, everyone.
Oh, good night.
Good night.
Good night. I don't see anyone. If anyone is here for this, please speak up. But I did receive correspondence from the property owner that his attorney would not be available to join the meeting tonight. And he sent in some pictures of current conditions and some email correspondence that I just wanted to share with you real quick. So,
Commissioner Begeman, with just a question. It's the same address, but different landowner?
No, so this is, I'm sorry. Good call. What was just read?
7680 Pent Road.
Pent Road.
So we just did both the cease and correct order and the notice of violation, I think, as one conversation. And I will make sure when I have discussion.
We really didn't deal with the NOV in the last conversation.
At this point, the property owner has left. So I think the best way to handle this would be for me to have a conversation with the property owner, making sure that they're following the recommendation or the requirements of the notice of violation as well.
Thank you. Notice of violation 103 Sunset Hill Drive, clearing and filling of a wetland.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, everything I was saying previously applies to this violation. So I will pull up that email correspondence real quick.
This is Commissioner Rose. Commissioner Grinnell, something like a radio or something is going on in the background. Can you mute yourself?
There we go.
Nope, not quite.
Nope, not quite. So
somebody mute him.
Working on it. Okay. So I received the following email from the property owner for 103 Sunset Hill. Thursday, May 14th, my attorney, Joseph L. Rini, has a previous obligation with the city of New Haven that evening and will not be available to be online here with the Branford Wetlands Commission. Please share this email as well as the attached photos with the commission members. Attached are some photos of the area showing that vegetation is beginning to grow through the wood chips in the area in question. The landscaper I wanted to hire but was told I could not due to the stop work order for that area at the time has told me nature is taking its natural course and reclaiming the area with its already native vegetation beginning to grow. It was indicated to me by the landscaper, given the season and warmer weather expected ahead of us, that by the end of the year, the entire wetlands area will have filled in with native vegetation. In the photos provided, you will notice greens coming up through the wood chips as well as ferns and grasses. I I am asking the commission to continue this matter and allow for your agency employees to visit my property periodically to report on growth in the area and ensure no one is doing any further work within the wetlands. Being we are not challenging the current wetland boundaries as set forth in the town records and on maps, there's no need for the area to be restaked out. And since the native vegetation is growing back naturally throughout the area in question, there is no need for a soil scientist or to introduce any new foreign vegetation to the area. With some patience, nature will take its course with the warmer weather and the native vegetation once again grow throughout this area. I am a small independent business owner, and this COVID-19 virus and the ensuing lockdown has taken a great financial toll. At this time, I am asking the commission to allow nature to take its course, being there is no need to attempt introducing new plants into the area. Please table or close the matter rather than having it on the calendar month after month. And if in the future there is a need to revisit the matter, then take it up at that time. Thank you for your consideration. This matter regards John Affairs.
So this is Commissioner Boda. I'm not remembering what happened at this site, but is there fill in the wetland and like wood chips in the wetland that needed to be removed? And I get a little concerned about native vegetation that's filling in. Like typically when there's work that's done in the wetland, there tend to be invasives that start popping up. So can you?
This is Commissioner Rose. So look, if you're standing on Sunset Hill looking up their driveway, there was a pocket, an island, very small island of wetland on the left side of the driveway where it intersects with Sunset Hill Road. That was completely denuded and filled with mulch. The reason for the wetland scientist request by the commission is that there was a concern that in the work that was done, the wetland soils had been removed. And the reason for, and you can see this is a very small island at the top of the screen with the white dimensions around it. That's the area we're talking about. And we requested a soil scientist to determine whether the soils were even there and where exactly the boundary lay. And of course, we all know what's coming up through the mulch now. It's dandelions and weeds. So the question is whether we want to pursue asking them to have a soil scientist confirm whether or not significant grading occurred or removal of soils, and that wetland area had been either undermined or eliminated by virtue of the soils having been removed. That was the impetus for asking for the soil scientist.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. So that does summarize the activity that occurred. I wasn't entirely sure about the conversations that were had, reading the minutes and looking through the files. It was a little bit confusing to figure out what the property owner was told. It seemed like the minutes kind of contradicted with the order a little bit, or maybe not contradicted, but they didn't exactly line up. So it was kind of hard to figure out exactly what it was the commission wanted. So the actual order states, or letter, halt all work within inland wetlands and its 100-foot upland review area, which they did. Have a professional soil scientist flag and stake the inland wetland boundaries. They have not done that. Have a professional prepare a planting plan to restore the inland wetland and its neighboring 100-foot upland review area. They did hire a landscape professional, and they submitted some proposed plantings. I don't know if it's what you guys were looking for. It doesn't say to hire a wetland scientist specifically for that aspect. And then to present the plan at the Wetlands Water Court meeting for approval prior to implementation. But the latest correspondence received from the property owner requests, obviously, what I just read, so.
This Commissioner Basserman, Jamie, didn't you read in the kind of introductory comment there that we did specifically request a soil scientist?
You request a soil scientist to flag and stake the inland wetland boundaries. However, when you look at, I didn't go back and listen to the recording, but when you look at the minutes,
Excuse me, Commissioner Basserman, what were you reading from?
that was the letter that was sent to the property owner following up on the enforcement action.
I mean, this Commissioner Rose, the letter was clear. It required a professional soil scientist flag the wetland, and the purpose the commission had was determine whether it even still existed. And the next sentence simply says a professional will develop a plan. It doesn't say a professional soil scientist. So I don't know that the commission cares who does a planting plan, but step one was to flag the wetland, which may or may not still exist, and they have not done that.
Commissioner Bassett, which would require a soil scientist.
Correct. Commissioner Rose.
Commissioner Boda, I'm not inclined to waive anything and to go away. The homeowner needs to take the action that was put forward by the commission based on the action that they took on their property. And then we can make a determination, but we can't go away.
It was worth asking.
Yeah.
This is Commissioner Kraus. And if I recall this property correctly, didn't they take down almost all of the trees and left them laying in what was once determined to be wetlands?
That's not my recollection as Commissioner Rose. That's not everything that they touched. Whatever was there, they took it all down and completely filled it in with mulch, but I don't recall depositing, debris or trees anywhere.
Okay, I could be mistaken, but I agree with what's been said already, and I don't think that anything was presented in this letter that would cause me to not want to follow up on this further.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I don't think that there were trees removed, but I think there was a lot of vegetation, like shrubs and lower growth removed. And there are wood chips. The order didn't say anything about removing the wood chips from any of the areas. And trying to kind of find out a little bit more about the history of this violation, not having been here when it was started, at the September meeting, the minutes state that the commission instructed David McCarthy to send a letter to the property owner advising him to obtain a professional to compile a planting plan to restore the wetland. Also, a surveyor is needed to stake the flag boundaries of the area that needs to be restored. But the letter sent out stated to have a soil scientist delineate the wetland. So I guess I just want to double check that that is in fact what the commission wants, is to have the soil scientist identify the location of wetland soils currently.
This is Commissioner Rose. For whatever it's worth, it's I live near there. I have friends that live near there. I was acutely aware of the site, and I'm crystal clear in my recollection that we asked for a soil scientist to map it because the nature of what they did suggested that they may very well have removed the fill or the soil that comprised the wetland. That was the purpose of having it flagged, was it would confirm that it either still exists or it doesn't, because if it doesn't, then we have more work to do than just replanting. And that was step one. So without that, we can go on and on all night. There's no step two if we lack step one.
Oh, this is Commissioner Bassman. So I think we get back to the property owner and indicate we are still outstanding in terms of what the commission asked for. Anything else on this, Jamie?
So I'll send him another letter stating that you guys have reviewed his request and still are requesting the same things as the previous letter and reiterate what those things are.
Commissioner Bassman, yes. Okay, 20 Huntington, next up, 20 Huntington Drive, clearing of trees and vegetation within the upland review area.
Jamie, sorry, just real quick, Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, do you guys want to look at the pictures that he submitted for 103 Sunset? 20 Huntington Drive, I contacted the property owner. We've been playing a little bit of phone tag. I have not gotten any updates regarding planting plan. A silt fence has been put up, but it's not properly installed last time I checked. At the same time, there have not been any visible erosion issues from the street. There's no official violation order, no notice of violation or cease and correct at this time. I can either try and continue to follow up with him for the June meeting via the current communication levels we've been doing, or if you guys think that it needs to get escalated to a notice of violation to maybe kick it into gear, could look into doing that. I'm not entirely sure what the full extent of the activity is because I've not been on the property. I've only seen it from the street.
It's Commissioner Bassman. Jamie, how extensive is the clearing? Do we know?
I don't know as far as the rear of the property goes. Essentially, there was clearing along the edge of the property. So based on David's notes, which I'm not sure how far he's gone on to whether he's been on the property or just seen it from the street as well. But this red area here is the cleared area. There's some ponding areas over here on water course to the rear of the property. So they have placed a silt fence along the property line, but like I said, last I checked, it was not properly towed in. That being said, there hasn't been any transport of sediment, but I've not received a planting plan. And I have not received any responses to requesting to having the silt fence towed in.
Commissioner Bassman, to me, we move forward with a NOV, I think, on this.
Okay.
That concludes the enforcement activities. Other business, permit extension request, inland wetland 150101, 271 Brushy Plain Road.
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. Per state statute, inland wetland, in this particular scenario, the permit expires based on planning and zoning expiration date. So since their planning and zoning approval hasn't expired and they'll be requesting an extension as well, or they have requested an extension as well, Planning and Zoning Commission, as long as that extension gets granted, that it would be an extension of the inland wetland approval, with the one disclaimer that it cannot be valid for more than 10 years. So the planning and zoning approval was granted slightly later than the inland wetland. So the maximum extensions that planning and zoning can offer would exceed the inland wetland approval period. That makes sense. Does anyone have any questions? I plan on writing them a letter, basically outlining that and referencing the statutes and providing what the maximum life of the permit could be.
Commissioner Basserman, seems reasonable at this point. No agent approvals? Next up, agent approvals. Any agent approvals?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, there were no, pretty sure there were no agent approvals.
Sounds good to me.
No.
Commissioner Basserman, correspondence and announcements, recent water main replacement at 102591 West Main Street.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I just wanted to update the commission. I've reached out to the Regional Water Authority and the property owner there. That's Brandhaven Plaza. Back in, I want to say December, prior to me starting, there was a water main replacement. And based on past practice, the commission has taken jurisdiction over that. So I have requested an after the fact permit for that activity. And I've been in correspondence with them regarding erosion controls and stabilization of the site. So I will hopefully have more for you on that, the June meeting.
Thank you much.
And then prior to moving on, did you want to make an announcement regarding deep?
Yes. Some of the comments that commissioners have raised over the past couple of months regarding process, some questions regarding authority and how we deal with the inland wetland issues, prompted me to contact DEEP. A representative from DEEP is willing to spend an hour with us at the next meeting. And my suggestion was it would kind of be a little bit of a presentation, but then a lot of opportunity for questions from the commission to the DEEP representative on items that are of interest, not only to individual commissioners, but maybe to the group as a whole. The representative from DEEP is named Darcy Winter. She's been there forever. And so she has a breadth of knowledge regarding inland wetland issues. So I would suggest at this point that for purposes of trying to make this an effective hour of our time, that if you have questions that you'd like to see addressed, please forward them to Jamie, and we'll work with DEEP to make sure that we use the hour effectively at our June meeting.
Thank you.
Anything else, Jamie?
It's late.
It's now almost 11. How about a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
And a second.
Second,
Thank
Commissioner
you all.
Boda.
Thank you all for attending, and we'll see you in June.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.